Chapter 54. Chapter 54, Heading towards Da Yuan City. Ling Han did not feel this was odd in any way. From the start, Liu Yutong was very talented in the field of martial arts. It was illogical that she had still not yet managed to form sword qi. Now that she has made a breakthrough in this area, it seemed as if the potential she had been accumulating gushed out in one go, producing excellent results. However, the third flash of sword qi would not be so easily formed. For Liu Yutong, she was already satisfied with being able to possess two flashes at the mere age of 18 and stepping into the ranks of young rulers. Moreover, she could be considered to be among the stronger, more powerful young rulers. The general level of martial arts in Rain Country was too low. You'd be praised as a ruler once you managed to form saber or sword qi. When the new year came, all the branch families of the Ling clan returned to the main clan residence to greet the coming of spring together. Normally, these external branch families had their own residences outside the main clan residence and were responsible for managing the clan's various businesses. Most of them were ordinary people. Only a few have stepped onto the path of cultivation. After all, for every 10 people there was only one person that actually possessed a spirit base. Big Brother Han. A little girl by the name of Ling Zixen kept following Ling Han around. After the new year, the little girl would only be 8 years old, yet she had already awoken her spirit base. Furthermore, it was a low-level Earth-grade spirit base. According to the rules of the clan, she was qualified to be enrolled in the Grey Cloud Academy, and the clan would provide her school fees as well as cultivation resources. Everyone knew that you wouldn't be able to protect your wealth if you didn't have enough power. As a result, every clan would carefully nurture the clansmen who were found to be gifted with talent to become martial artists. If there appeared a genius amongst these clansmen, it would also be a source of pride for the clan. Just like the 8 great clans of the imperial city, they had all been merely small clans which grew by choosing such a policy. There had been 3 members of the Ling clan that had been enrolled in the Grey Cloud Academy previously. Aside from Ling Han and Ling Muyun, there was another named Ling Zhidao. However, as he was now getting too old, after the new year, he would no longer attend the academy. Instead, he would join the clan guards. After a few years of gaining experience, he'd be promoted to assistant captain and then captain. Such an important post naturally had to be handed to a clansman for safety's sake. Meanwhile, as Ling Zixen had awakened, after the new year, she would begin attending the Grey Cloud Academy. However, Ling Han had other plans. He could not possibly remain in Ling clan forever. He desired to climb to the summit of martial arts in the future, so Rain Country was too small for him. As a result, before he left, he needed to nurture as many talented people as possible to help his father relieve some of his worries. He has decided to bring Ling Zixen to the imperial city and enroll her in the Huyang Academy. Ling Dongxing had already obtained a place of enrollment in Huyang Academy previously, and Ling Han definitely would be able to rank amongst the top 50 participants in the Da Yuan tournament. In this manner, their clan would have 2 places. Of course, he did not intend to become the babysitter of the girl. He would definitely have her parents follow her to the imperial city to take care of her daily needs. Why are you crying again? Ling Han smiled, as he picked up the little girl. Da Xiong is bullying Shen Shen, the little girl said, full of grievances. Big Brother Han, you help Shen Shen beat him up. Ling Han laughed heartily, patted the little girl's head, and said, you and Da Xiong are both members of the Ling clan, so you must help and support one another. Our fists should be aimed at outsiders, and not used to beat our own people up. But he said Shen Shen is ugly, the little girl said, pouting. Our family's Shen Shen is so pretty. You're now a small beauty and in the future, you'd be a great beauty. Da Xiong is only jealous of you, Ling Han said, smiling. The little girl was instantly cheered by such compliments, and clapping her hands, she said, Shen Shen is the most beautiful girl in the world. After a moment of thought, she realized this was a bit too arrogant, so she changed her words and said, Big Sister Yutong is the most beautiful, Shen Shen is the second most beautiful. Ling Han gave a big laugh, and said to Liu Yutong, she's praising you. Big Sister Yutong, when are you and Big Brother Han getting married? The little girl asked innocently, her head tilted. Liu Yutong instantly blushed at this. She swiftly turned around and ran off, causing Ling Zixien to feel very puzzled. What was going on? Xian, you've scared off my wife, how are you going to compensate me? Ling Han deliberately frowned and said. Ling Ziyuan bit at her fingernail, thought for a while, and said comfortingly to Ling Han, Big brother Han, Xian will help you find a prettier big sister. She looked extremely mischievous when she said this. Ling Han could not hold back his laughter. Kids say what they like, and were innocent and adorable. It was too bad that this purity could not be preserved forever. After the New Year celebration, Ling Dongxing, Ling Han, and Liu Yutong all set off towards the Da Yuan city to participate in the Da Yuan tournament. Da Yuan city was more than 800 miles away from Grey Cloud Town. The three of them hastened their journey, and 2 days later, they arrived outside Da Yuan city. Compared with the small, tiny Grey Cloud Town, Da Yuan city looked very imposing and grand. The city grounds extended over a few tens of miles, and the city walls were about 100 meters tall. It looked like a creeping colossal beast. There were 4 gates of entry into Da Yuan city: north, east, south and west gates. Every day, there would be travelers coming in from all directions to this most bustling, most lively city within the nearest 1,000 miles. There were merchants, refugees, and wandering martial artists here. The overall level of martial arts in the city was higher than the surrounding area by a whole new level. The current Da Yuan king was a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier, and according to rumors, he was also the only one in spiritual ocean tier, possessing ultimate power and prestige. Ling Han and his group arrived at the city gate. They did not have to be searched or go through any kind of security check. They only had to pay the city entrance fees, 1 silver coin per person. This was not very expensive for them, though for commoners, this would indeed be a very big sum. Within the city, there were many tall, grand buildings of various heights extending into the distance. It was the epitome of a king's city, stunning any new visitors to the city. Ling Dongxing had come here a long time ago, and had even left the country before, so he naturally would not be shocked. Liu Yutong came from the imperial city, so this was a common sight to her. The two of them had initially thought that Ling Han would be stunned by such a grand sight, yet Ling Han looked completely calm and unperturbed, shocking them. They went off in search of an inn. However, it seemed as if many had come to the city to participate in the upcoming Da Yuan tournament, and practically every inn was fully occupied. They walked around for over half a day, yet still had not managed to find a place of accommodation. Yi, Grandmaster Ling. They had been walking around on the main streets when they heard a surprised voice call out. A white-haired old man walked over to them. He was Zhu Hixin. So you're here, Ling Han said, smiling. Grandmaster Ling, I happened to receive an invitation from an old friend during the New Year, asking me to come visit. I hope Grandmaster Ling will forgive me for not paying you a visit during the New Year. Zhu Hixin bent slightly at the waist, a hint of fear on his face. He had already considered Ling Han as half his master, so he would naturally be fearful that he had caused Ling Han's displeasure. Ling Han shook his head and smiled, and said, You don't need to call me Grandmaster, you can just call me by my name in future. In this life, he had already decided to start from a minor character and walk firmly and sturdily onwards, battling various so-called geniuses to improve himself. Otherwise, if he continued to be a Grandmaster alchemist, then due to the grand, noble status accorded to an alchemist, which genius would dare to spar with him? This Zhu Hixin shook his head continuously. He was a person who was reverent of his master and his teaching. Ling Han had granted him a kindness in guiding him before, so in his heart, Ling Han was already his teacher. To directly address your teacher by his name without any kind of honorific, this was practically disgraceful. Don't say this or that. It's decided. If you call me Grandmaster in future, then I'd really be angry, Ling Han deliberately put on a stern face and said in a half-joking manner. Chapter 55. Chapter 55, Introduction. Zhu Hixin could not help feeling troubled, yet once he saw the determined expression Ling Han had on his face, he could only nod his head and say, I shall obey Grandmaster's, no, young friend Ling's words. In the end, he still could not bear addressing Ling Han without any honorific. At least the address young friend Ling sounded more polite. Oh, right, Is young friend Ling here to take part in the Da Yuan tournament? Zhu Hixin asked. Ling Han gave a nod and said, we aren't very fortunate, we still have yet to find a place of accommodation. Then why not come and stay at our Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? Zhu Hixin's eyes immediately lit up and suggested to Ling Han. Is that suitable? Ling Han had walked around for over half a day, so he really didn't want to tire himself anymore. Suitable, of course it's suitable. Zhu Hixin said quickly. To be able to stay near to Grandmaster Ling, he'd be able to conveniently ask Grandmaster Ling for guidance in alchemy. Then we shall trouble you, Ling Han said, smiling. It's no trouble at all. Zhu Hixin walked in the lead, guiding them to the branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion in the city. Unlike the small branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion in Grey Cloud Town, Da Yuan City's branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was actually a heavily guarded, gigantic palace, and there were about 100 alchemists stationed here. These alchemists were in charge of concocting a massive amount of pills every day, which were then delivered to be sold at places like Grey Cloud Town and Guorok Town. Ma Da Jun of the Grey Cloud Town's branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was only in charge of overseeing things, and usually, he did not have to concoct any pills. Usually, these characters had lower rate of successfully concocting pills, so if they were given the same medicinal ingredients to be concocted into pills, it would be too much of a waste. Low-level black-grade alchemists similarly had a very high, noble status in this place. All guards as well as the alchemists made their salutations respectfully when they saw Zhu Hixin approach. The branch master of this branch of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was called Zhong Wei Shan. He was also a low-level black-grade alchemist and had been friends with Zhu Hixin for many years. In the past, both had entered Heaven's Medicine Pavilion at the same time, and through many years of motivating and competing with each other, both managed to become low-level black-grade alchemists. Young friend Ling, I have a presumptuous request, Zhu Hixin said a bit embarrassedly after he had made arrangements for them to reside there temporarily. You've encountered some problem in alchemy? Ling Han said with a smile. He. Zhu Hixin was a bit embarrassed. Although he was already quite old, but in front of Ling Han, it seemed as if he was only a young brat who had just entered the field of alchemy. He did not think this was anything odd though. He said, not me, it's an old friend of mine. He managed to obtain an old formula. However, because of the long passage of time, there are some words that can no longer be clearly read from the old formula. Thus, he has encountered some trouble when he attempted to concoct the pill. Ling Han suddenly understood and said, you want me to help you write down the complete formula? I hope for young friend's guidance, Zhu Hixin said. The name of this pill formula is reverse pill, and it's very effective for healing wounds. If this formula is able to see the light again, then many people will be saved. So it was reverse pill. Could it be that even such ordinary medicinal pills have already been lost in the passage of time? Ling Han felt that this was really strange. Whether martial arts, or alchemy, with accumulated studies and research of every generation, these two fields should have become stronger and stronger. Yet why had so many pill formulas been lost in the passage of time? He nodded, and said, then I'll go take a look. This way please, Grandmaster. Zhu Hixin immediately switched back to using honorifics. Only after the words left his mouth did he react and change his words as he said, young friend, this way, please. The two of them walked side by side and soon arrived at a residence in the palace courtyard. The door was ajar, and there were 3 people within, 2 old men and a young girl. The 2 old men were both seated and drinking tea while the young girl was standing behind one of the old men. The young girl appeared to be about 16 or 17 years old. She was quite delicate and pretty. However, one corner of her mouth was slightly uplifted, and her big, black eyes looked extremely intelligent, so on the whole, she looked rather crafty. Seeing Zhu Hixin, the 2 old men stood and smiled in greeting. Old man Zhu, let me introduce someone to you. One of the old men hurried over, and pointing at the other old man, said, this is Duanmu Changfeng. Brother Duanmu has been praised to excel at both alchemy and sword arts. His sweeping cloud sword art is the best in the whole of Rain Country. You've admired him for a long time, right? When Zhu Hixin heard this, there was no way he could introduce Ling Han immediately. He raised his clasped hands in Duanmu Changfeng's direction, and said, Brother Duanmu, It's an honor to meet you at last. Haha, Brother Zhu, I heard that you had improved the wind and fire pill just recently. I've long wanted to come and meet you, and today I've finally gotten the chance to, Duanmu Changfeng said with a smile. The other old man was naturally Zhong Wei Shan. Brother Duanmu, old man Zhong, let me introduce someone to you. This is Zhu Hixin intended to introduce Ling Han to the two of them. Old man Zhu, now that I've invited Brother Duanmu here, perhaps with the combined efforts of the three of us, we may be able to patch up the pill formula for reverse pill within 3 months, Zhong Wei Shan said excitedly. Let me introduce Dash. Haha, Brother Zhong, you speak too highly of me. My main focus is on sword arts, and I have only lightly studied about alchemy. The main workforce will still be the two of you. I will just suggest ideas from one side, Duanmu Changfeng said, once again interrupting Zhu Hixin. The two old men had naturally thought that Ling Han was a junior of Zhu Hixin, and so did not really pay attention to him. At that moment, the young girl walked over to Ling Han, and walked 2 circles around him. She kept making a clicking noise with her mouth, as if she was making some kind of appraisal. Are you Grandmaster Zhu's disciple? The young girl asked. No. Ling Han shook his head. Oh, then you must not have passed Grandmaster Zhu's test yet. The young girl thought that she was being very conscientious, and in a very mature, experienced manner, patted Ling Han's shoulder, and said, I have already been received by Grandmaster Zhong as a disciple, so I will be your elder sister disciple in future. Don't worry, I'll definitely take care of you. If anyone dares to bully you, just announce my name. Ling Han could not help smiling, and said, Announce what name? Ya, you don't even know who I am. The young girl pressed one hand to her forehead, and shook her head repeatedly. Ari, what rural village did you pop out from? I am Qi Zhontai, the 7th princess of the royal house of Da Yuan. Ling Han gave an O. A mere princess was not someone who would make him lose his composure. Hey, what attitude is that? I am your elder sister disciple. Qi Zhontai said angrily. My 2 brothers, let me introduce to you an exceptional genius of alchemy. It was only now that Zhu Hixin managed to find an opportunity to introduce Ling Han. He walked over to Ling Han and said, This here is Ling Han, young friend Ling. To tell you the truth, the wind and fire pill was successfully completed under the guidance of young friend Ling. If not for his assistance, it may have taken a few years before I could finally complete improving the pill. What? Zhong Wei Shan and Duanmu Zhongfeng were both dumbfounded. They looked at Ling Han and turned to look at Zhu Hixin, feeling that all this was too unreal. Qi Zhontai covered her gaping mouth with one hand. She had previously taken Ling Han to be Zhu Hixin's junior, but in the blink of an eye, he had become Grandmaster Zhu's young friend. Then wouldn't that mean he was her senior? Old man Zhu, you're kidding, right? Zhong Wei Shan called out immediately. Zhu Hixin's expression turned solemn and said, How could I possibly joke about this kind of matter? Zhong Wei Shan and Duanmu Changfeng once again turned back to look at Ling Han, and this time, their stares were completely different. Chapter 56. Chapter 56. Who wants your pill formula? So young. Whether it was the field of martial arts or the field of alchemy, there has never been a lack of geniuses, but Ling Han was only how old? 17 years old? 18 years old? Even if he had been studying alchemy from the moment he was born, how many years of experience could he have accumulated at such a young age? And what alchemist had not gone through the process of concocting massive amounts of pills to accumulate experience before finally gaining recognition? So which aristocratic family specializing in alchemy is young friend the heir to? Zhong Wei Shan asked very politely. He knew Zhu Hixin very well, and knew that it was impossible that the latter would actually make a joke about this kind of thing. I'm self-taught, Ling Han said. He was already the alchemist emperor, how could he be the heir to someone else? Zhong Wei Shan was even more shocked, whereas Duanmu Changfeng still thought that Zhu Hixin must be joking around. The most important thing in alchemy was inheritance. For example, in the case of pill formulae, without a master or teachings of one's clansmen, how else would one have obtained them? By pondering over it oneself. What a joke, all pill formulae were the accumulated result of multiple generations of alchemists' work. If one depended on their own efforts to create a completely new pill formula, then one may only be able to invent only one or two types after spending their whole lives hard at work, but there was no guarantee of the effects. Old Man Zhong, take out the pill formula for the reverse pill first, Zhu Hixin urged. He believed that as long as Ling Han helped, it would definitely scare these two old men witless. Zhong Weishan was slightly doubtful. Even if the formula for the reverse pill was not complete, it was still extremely valuable, and he had sacrificed a lot to obtain it. It was like a book of secret martial arts skills. Who would easily show it to others? Brother Zhong, you can't. Duanmu Chang Feng immediately shook his head. Even such an important man as he had sacrificed a considerable amount just to be able to have a glance at this formula, and that was still while taking into consideration the fact that he was assisting with the patching up work of the reverse pill formula. Otherwise, the price he had to pay would be even larger. Who does this brat think he is to be able to easily see the pill formula? Zhong Weishan looked at Zhu Hixin. It was not that he distrusted this good friend of his. It was just that Ling Han was really too young, making him feel that Ling Han wasn't very dependable. Old Man Zhong, you don't trust me? Zhu Hixin was angered. This was a real grandmaster alchemist. Even he wanted nothing more than to follow Ling Han and benefit from his teachings. Unfortunately, he lacked the qualifications to be accepted by Ling Han as a disciple. Yet Duanmu Chang Feng actually dared to doubt Ling Han's ability and think that the latter was not qualified to see the pill formula. How could this not enrage him? If it was not for considering Zhong Weishan's face, he'd be picking a fight with Duanmu Chang Feng now. Zhong Weishan frowned lightly. From the bottom of his heart, of course he was willing to trust Zhu Hixin. After all, they have been good friends for dozens of years. How could he not understand what kind of person Zhu Hixin was? However, Ling Han was really much too young, so young that he didn't even look the slightest bit like a grandmaster alchemist. Good. 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 Zhu Hixin saw the doubt in Zhong Weishan's eyes, and was angered to the point that his chest was trembling. He said, Zhong Weishan, since you don't trust me, then from today onwards, we will no longer be friends. Old Man Zhu. Zhong Weishan turned pale due to shock. Zhu Hixin had even said that he would break off their friendship, proving how furious he was. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, Don't be angry, I'll take it out right now, all right? You don't have to force yourself. Zhu Hixin gave a humph. In his eyes, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor that stood at the top of the world, and Zhong Weishan's attitude was already very disrespectful. As a result, he felt ashamed in front of Ling Han, so how could he still bear to ask Ling Han for help to patch up the pill formula? Young friend Ling, I'm really sorry, the old man said apprehensively to Ling Han. Ling Han gave a wave of his hand before looking at Duanmu Chang Feng, and said, Do you think that I would consider the formula for the reverse pill important? Haha, then let me recite the names of some medicinal ingredients for you. Violet smoked leaf, thousand blossom fruit, windless grass. In one breath, he recited out more than 10 different medicinal ingredients. Duanmu Chang Feng was unable to make heads or tails of it. What on earth was he talking about? But Zhong Weishan's expression kept changing, and his hands had also started trembling, his gaze becoming more and more feverish. How could he not know what Ling Han was saying? These were the ingredients written on the pill formula for the reverse pill. However, there were 3 ingredients which could not be clearly read, and the quantities required for one of the ingredients had also been blurred. Ling Han did not recite any other medicinal ingredients. All of the ingredients he recited belonged to the formula, and he had even recited an additional 3 ingredients. What did that mean? That he had possession of the complete formula for the reverse pill. What a joke, he had actually been so petty, and did not bear to take out a formula that was incomplete. He really felt so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole to hide in. Young friend, please forgive this Zhong Weishan's ignorance. Zhong Weishan clasped his hands, and bowed so deeply that his head was at Ling Han's waist level, showing how respectful this apology was. Ling Han was unmoved. He had come to guide Zhong Weishan out of kindness, yet had to suffer the latter's doubt, so of course he was not pleased. Duanmu Chang Feng was even more convinced that these 2 old men had already lost their minds to be so easily bluffed by this little brat. He gave a humph and said, Brat, I don't know what trick you're playing, but you want to trick me, that's completely impossible. Brother Duanmu, Please leave. Zhong Wei Shan suddenly straightened from his bow and said coldly. What? Duanmu Chang Feng almost leaped up from his seat. Has your head been kicked by a mule? You had still been standing on the same side with me just now, and now you're actually pointing the spear at me? How can you be so ungrateful? Brother Zhong, what is the meaning of this? His expression also turned cold. The things you've gifted me, I will have someone send it back later. For now, you are not welcomed here. Zhong Wei Shan said indifferently. He had almost been deceived by Duanmu Chang Feng, and had almost missed the opportunity to come into contact with a Grandmaster alchemist, so whatever good feelings he had towards Duanmu Chang Feng had disappeared. He could barely hold himself back from biting his head off now. For any alchemist, there was no higher honor than restoring an ancient pill formula. Good. Duanmu Chang Feng's face had turned ashen. For someone who excelled both in the fields of alchemy and sword arts and whose position was so venerable like him, to actually be turned out by someone, and moreover, for the cause of it all to be a little brat, how could he not be furious? With a swing of his sleeves, he stepped out of the door. Before he left, his eyes swept over Ling Han, and they were filled with coldness. Apparently, he had blamed everything on Ling Han. This was really uninvited trouble. Ling Han shook his head. Duanmu Chang Feng was in gushing spring tear, and was not someone he could fight on equal footing yet, so he could not be careless. Old man Zhu, are you satisfied now? Zhong Wei Shan said with a smile. How tactful of you. Zhu Hixin glared at Zhong Wei Shan for a moment. No matter what, they had been old friends for so many years, so the words he spoke just now had only been out of anger and irritation. He walked over to Ling Han, bowed deeply, and said, Young friend, this old and useless man apologizes to you. This old fellow too. Zhong Wei Shan bowed again. However, his attitude still was not comparable with Zhu Hixin's. Zhu Hixin addressed himself as this old and useless man, whereas he addressed himself as this old fellow, so it seemed that he was still putting on some airs. But Qi Zhontai, who had been standing at the side all this while, was dumbfounded. Her master had actually chased off Duanmu Chang Feng, a man who excelled both in alchemy and martial arts because of Ling Han. Furthermore, he had even started a feud with the other. This brat was really too capable. Chapter 57. Chapter 57, Join the Queue. Ling Han walked over to the study table and took up a pen and paper. With very good penmanship, he immediately started writing on the paper. He wrote very quickly, and soon lifted his pen from the paper. He then handed the paper he had written on to Zhong Wei Shan. Because of Zhu Hixin, he had still decided to give Zhong Wei Shan a helping hand. After all, the old man has always been at his beck and call, and has helped him considerably. More importantly, it was he who had provided Ling Han with information about the whereabouts of the Earth Dragon grass. Zhong Wei Shan received the paper, and as his eyes swept over it, an expression of surprise and joy appeared on his face. This was the pill formula for the reverse pill. It definitely was, because not only were the medicinal ingredients the same as what he had on his incomplete formula, even the quantities required were the same. Furthermore, there were even additional 3 ingredients that could not be read from the incomplete formula. Zhong Wei Shan was extremely excited, because in the field of alchemy, the reverse pill was publicly known to be lost in the passage of time. Even if he had spent a large sum of money to purchase the incomplete formula, this incomplete formula had actually been inferred by many alchemists before. They had all attempted to restore the complete formula, but had not succeeded. If he managed to produce the complete pill, then his status in the world of alchemists would ascend to a whole new level. What a joke! Previously, he had still been reluctant to show the incomplete formula to Ling Han. Now wasn't reality practically slapping him in the face? The old man's face turned very red when he thought of this. Zhu Hixin gave a humph and said, Old man Zhong, are you happy now? He was still a little upset at what had occurred previously. Here. Zhong Wei Shan laughed, slightly embarrassed. His hands grasped onto the pill formula as if it was some kind of ultimate treasure. Ling Han walked out of the residence, and said, I'm going now. Many thanks, young friend. Zhong Wei Shan quickly ran over. Once he knew that Ling Han was currently staying at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he did not feel any rush to immediately repair the relationship between himself and Ling Han. Moreover, he also needed a little time to adapt. Ling Han nodded. After he stepped out of the residence, he strolled around. Hey, you are really ungenerous. Qi Zhongtai rushed over, an expression of rebuke on her face. Ling Han smiled, and asked, in what way am I ungenerous? You obviously are not Grandmaster Zhu's disciple, and caused me to embarrass myself, she said in reproach. Previously, she had even said that she would become Ling Han's elder sister disciple and would take care of Ling Han in future. She had never thought that this guy was so awesome that even Duanmu Changfeng would be driven off because of him. I never said I was. It was you who thought I was. Ling Han shook his head. I don't care, you have to compensate me, Qi Zhongtai said shamelessly. Then how do you want me to compensate you? Ling Han asked. Qi Zhongtai tilted her head, thought for a while then said, I haven't thought of it yet, so you'll owe me first. Oh, right. Are you here to participate in the Da Yuan tournament? That's right, Ling Han nodded. Then I'll kindly give you some exclusive behind-the-scenes information, Qi Zhongtai said. There is a considerable number of elites that have arrived to participate in the tournament this time. My fourth elder brother, of course, will be able to get first place. Aside from him, there is also Li Dongyu from the Stone Wolf sect. Apparently, he's also in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and has mastered the yellow-grade martial arts technique, Little Tianyuan Hands. Even my fourth elder brother has given him a very high appraisal. In the previous Da Yuan tournament, he got the 5th place. And there's also the third son of the Jin clan, Jin Wuji. He's also a freakishly talented guy. He's mastered the Jin Yang palm of their Jin clan. He's rumored to also have 2 flashes of palm chi, and in the previous tournament, he was 6th. And there's, let me think for a moment, an exceptional genius came from Fuyang town. His name is Xia Zhongguang. He's only 18 this year and is already in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. He's terrifyingly powerful in battle, and my fourth elder brother says he has the ability to enter the top 5. Right, there's also an amazing guy from Eternal River Town. What was his name again? Liu Yi. No, was it Liu Yu, or Liu something? He's also 18 years old, and in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. He also has the ability to enter the top 5. The last is the youngest son of the sect master of Bailey sect, Bailey Tangyun. Apparently, he's just in the 7th layer of element gathering tier, but my fourth elder brother says that this guy is extraordinary, and his prowess is nowhere beneath Li Dongyu. The girl's fourth elder brother was Qi Yongyi, the one with the nickname King of Eternal Night. He was extremely talented and very powerful, so much that even Liu Yutong had exclaimed in admiration. Although Ling Han was confident in himself, he would not be arrogant. It was just that he had too many trump cards in his hands, and he really could not think of anyone who could fight with him on even footing in the whole element gathering tier. Or at least, he could not think of anyone like that in this small Da Yuan city. He nodded, and said, "Thank you for your inside information." "Oh, right, fourth elder brother is hosting a feast tomorrow night. Why don't you come as well?" Qi Zhongtai said, "Only those martial artists who have a chance of getting into the top 50 in the Da Yuan tournament this time have been invited." Ling Han could not hold back a smile, and said, "Your elder brother is attracting the support of the people here. You're clever." Qi Zhongtai did not deny it. If Qi Yongyi intended to obtain the position of Da Yuan king in future, he needed to start gathering his support. It would not necessarily be the one who's extremely talented or very powerful that would obtain this royal position. It depended on one's popularity as well. If no one in the royal house was willing to support you, how would you be able to ascend to this position? Although fourth elder brother is extremely talented in the field of martial arts, eldest brother has built up his support through painstaking effort over the duration of more than 10 years. Additionally, eldest brother's mother is the daughter of the Liu clan head. So with the support and favor of the Liu clan, who would emerge victorious in the end is still uncertain. The young girl had curled her hands into fists, her face full of excitement, as if she wanted nothing more than for the two brothers to immediately start fighting, and allow her to spectate it to her heart's content. Aside from the king's house, There were 4 other great parties in Yuan City that could not be underestimated. They were respectively the Stone Wolf Sect, Bailey Sect, Jin Clan, and Liu Clan. With the close relationship he had with the Liu Clan, the eldest prince really had a big advantage in the battle for the king's position. Ling Han only thought about it for a short while before pushing it to the back of his mind. What did this battle for the king's position have to do with him? Qi Zhontai kept chattering on, bothering Ling Han for a very long while, before she finally let him go. However, when she turned around, she revealed a very crafty smile, and murmured, Fourth elder brother, I've introduced a very capable helper to you. You must not mess things up. Ling Han was someone whom even Zhu Hixin and Zhong Wei Shan addressed as young friend, so he must definitely have an astonishing ability in the field of alchemy. If Qi Yongyi was able to obtain Ling Han's aid, then there would definitely be innumerable martial artists willing to join him. For no other reason but for the sake of alchemical pills. When a martial artist cultivated, he would definitely need the aid of alchemical pills to support his cultivation. And if there was a high-grade alchemist overseeing things in the party, then it would naturally be very attractive to all martial artists. Ling Han naturally saw through the little girl's plot, but he did not think too much of it. He really did want to take a look at this Qi Yongyi, and see how much of a genius he was. On the second day, Ling Dongxing went with Ling Han to register. The participants for the Yuan tournament were only limited to the local area, so there was a need to provide proof of identification to go through a strict check, because this concerned the enrollment quota for the Huyang Academy. There were 36 cities in Rain Country, and it was impossible for them all to have the same average level of martial arts. Some were higher and some were lower. As a result, a martial artist who had only obtained the 60th position in a tournament in a city with a higher level of martial arts would be able to obtain the 40th position in a tournament in a city with a lower level of martial arts. Then wouldn't they all race over to a weaker city to participate in the tournament to be able to qualify for a place of enrollment in Huyang Academy? The people of Yuan City could only take part in the Yuan tournament, and the people from other cities too could not come over to participate. In this manner, everyone protected their own territory. There was a large number of people queuing up to register, and the queue was very long. Ling Han calmly joined the queue. He had already discarded the noble status of a martial artist in heaven tier he had possessed in his last life. Everything had begun anew, and he was setting out from the level of an ordinary man. There was nothing wrong with queuing up. After about 2 hours, it was almost his turn. There was only one person left in front of him. But it was at this moment that a young man escorted by 4 robust men in black forced the others in the queue aside. The 5 of them came to the registration point and directly cut into the queue in front of Ling Han. Hey, join the queue at the back. Ling Han frowned, and said in displeasure. The young man turned to look at Ling Han, and broke into laughter. With an expression filled with disbelief, he said, You actually want me to queue up? Do you know who I am? Chapter 58. Chapter 58, Chief Butler. I don't care who you are, get back to the end of the line. Ling Han spoke coldly. Ha 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 ha. The young man laughed raucously, as if he had heard the greatest joke in the world. He shook his head. You don't know who I am? I am Jin Wuxiang, my elder brother is Jin Wuji. Jin Wuji, that was one of the strongest competitors in this round of the Yuan tournament. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. As a young master of the Jin clan and with a very powerful elder brother, he did have the right to behave recklessly. Unfortunately, the one he had encountered now was Ling Han. Who cares if you're Jin Wuxiang or Jin Wuji? Whoever you are, get back to the end of the line. Ling Han gave an impatient wave of his hand. The smile on Jin Wuxiang's disappeared, replaced by an angered expression. After this brat found out who he was, he still dared to talk back to him. He gave a humph and said, It is beneath me to lower myself to the level of a minor character like you. He turned back around, and was about to begin the registration process. Get lost. Ling Han stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuxiang's shoulder, pulled back and the guy was flung out of the line. Peng. He crashed into the wall and slid down with a groan. He immediately grimaced in pain. Young Master Wuxiang. The 4 men in black hurried forward to help Jin Wuxiang up. Yet Ling Han did not even afford him a glance, and said, "I would like to register." When he looked at the man responsible for registering the participants, a faintly surprised expression appeared on his face, because this ordinary-looking old man was actually an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring Tier. "Bastard, you actually dare to make a move against me, and still want to pretend that nothing has happened." Jin Wuxiang shoved away the four robust men and strode forwards, his eyes spitting fire. He was the one and only sixth young master of the Jin clan and the younger brother of Jin Wuji, yet someone actually dared to disrespect him? "Get lost," Ling Han said coldly. "Who do you think you are, to actually be so bold to disrespect me?" Jin Wuxiang said furiously, stretching out a hand to take hold of Ling Han. "Why are you making a racket here?" The old man who was in charge of registering the participants said, very displeased. "Old guy, you dare interfere with my business?" Jin Wuxiang immediately gave a humph and glared at the old man. He was used to being arrogant, plus he was currently furious, and thus he did not give his actions a second thought. Ling Han could not help shaking his head internally. This guy really was seeking his own demise. Every generation of the Jin clan is weaker than the last. The brats now are becoming more and more thoughtless, the old man sighed. He stretched out his right hand and gave it a flick. Peng, a Herculean strength rushed forth, and Jin Wuxiang directly flew out of the registration room due to the resulting shockwave. When the old man made a move, everyone finally realized in shock that this was actually a powerful elite martial artist. All of their faces were filled with astonishment. Who would have thought that an old man who was in charge of recording and registering the participants would actually be an elite martial artist laying low? "I know who this senior is. He's the chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan King." "What? The chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan King? How come he's personally doing this kind of work?" "You ask me, but whom should I ask?" Someone recognized the identity of this old man, immediately causing a bout of whispering amongst the witnesses. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang, who had intended to avenge himself, immediately became well-behaved. Although the Jin clan was powerful, it was nothing compared to the power of the royal house of the Da Yuan King. No matter how arrogant and overbearing he was not a fool. He knew what kind of people he could trifle with, and what kind of people he shouldn't even think about trifling with. He quickly fled with his tail between his legs, followed by his four lackeys. After all, the registration deadline was the day after tomorrow, so there was no need for him to register today no matter what. However, Ling Han had become the target of his grudge. If it wasn't for his interference, there wouldn't have been any dispute about his cutting into the queue at all. "Many thanks for your fair judgment, Senior," Ling Han said, raising his clasped hands in gratitude. This was an elite in Gushing Spring Tier, and compared to the current him, the old man was much, much more powerful. Additionally, he had already let go of the identity of his last life as a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier and the Alchemy Emperor. There was nothing inappropriate about addressing the old man Senior. The old man had a bit of a blurred vision, and he smiled at Ling Han and said, "To be able to break through to the element-gathering tier at such a young age, such talent is really promising. My seventh young mistress is about the same age as you, so there might be chances of a match there." When everyone heard this, they could not help the weird expressions plastered on their faces. Was this chief butler here to seek a prince consort for the royal house? However, it was impossible for a princess's marriage to be decided by a butler. At most, the chief butler could only be responsible for the first round of selections. Whether the candidate passed or not would still be decided by the Da Yuan King. Even so, everyone sat up and took notice of Ling Han. To be able to gain the recognition of an elite of Gushing Spring Tier, this brat must have had some outstanding quality. Yet Ling Han pondered and recalled seventh young mistress. Wasn't that Qi Zhongtai, that young girl? He laughed loudly, and said, "Many thanks for your recognition, Senior, but we should complete the registration process first." This brat really was quite bold to actually dare reject the chief butler in this manner. Yet the chief butler was all smiles. He was only under the command of the Da Yuan King to see if there were any outstanding geniuses in this round of the Da Yuan tournament. It was definitely not possible that Ling Han would become the son-in-law of the royal house just because he had taken a fancy to him. "Good, where are you from, how old are you, "What is your cultivation level and what is your name?" he asked. "I am Ling Han, I came from Grey Cloud Town. After the new year, I'll be 17, and I am currently in the 4th layer of element gathering tier," Ling Han replied to each question with a smile. Pu. The eyeballs of those who were close enough to hear his reply were in danger of popping out of their heads, as if they had seen some kind of ghost. Many of them had already seen that Ling Han was in element gathering tier. Those who were not able to were clued into the fact by the words of the chief butler. But when they saw how young Ling Han was, they had all thought that he had just broken through. At most, he could only be at the peak period of the 1st layer of element gathering tier. Yet Ling Han was shockingly in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. A 17-year-old in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. This was absolutely astonishing. Even for the genius that was the 4th prince, with the endless cultivation resources supplied by the royal house, had he managed to reach the 4th layer of element gathering tier at 17 years old? Perhaps he had, but that was the farthest he could have ventured. With such a comparison, they could now easily see how freakishly talented Ling Han was. No wonder the chief butler wanted to enlist him as a prince consort candidate. Ling Han took out his proof of identification. This was something that every citizen of Rain Country would receive upon their birth. For those who did not have this kind of proof of identification, if they were discovered, they would either become slaves or would be forced to flee from the country. The chief butler only gave it a brief glance, and then gave a plaque to Ling Han. This was the plaque that would allow Ling Han to participate in the Da Yuan tournament that would be held 2 days after tomorrow. Usually, no one would dare to falsify their identity. This was because once you managed to squeeze into the top 50, there would be a second check to verify your identity. If it was discovered that anyone had dared to falsify their identity, this was definitely a very heavy crime. The chief butler was very interested in Ling Han, and kept chatting with him about ordinary, daily life. He really seemed as if he intended to marry off his own daughter to Ling Han. Although everyone else was starting to feel impatient, no one dared to rush him in any way. Even without his esteemed position as the chief butler of the royal house of the Da Yuan king, as an elite martial artist in Gushing Spring tier, he was undeniably a powerful presence within the nearest 1,000 miles. It wasn't until Ling Han finally voiced his intention to leave of his own accord that the chief butler ended the conversation. Yet he still told Ling Han that if he was free, he was welcome to visit the royal house of the Da Yuan king, which caused everyone else to turn red-eyed with envy. This was the same as giving a protective charm to Ling Han. Who would dare make a move against him now? Chapter 59. Chapter 59, Attending the Feast. Because the registration process took too long, Ling Dongxing and his son had their lunch before returning to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. After resting for a while, it was about close to night time. After Ling Han and Liu Yutong made slight preparations, they set off towards the residence of the 4th prince to attend the dinner banquet. The residence of the 4th prince was only 1 street away from the royal house of the Da Yuan king, so the 2 residences were really very close. However, out of the many children of the Da Yuan king, only 2 had gained the privilege of possessing their own individual residences. The 1st prince and the 4th prince. The 1st prince, Qi Yongsheng, had displayed his outstanding qualities from birth. With his extraordinary talent, as well as the fact he was the eldest son of the first wife of the Da Yuan king, he had naturally long firmly established his identity as the heir. But with the sudden emergence of the powerful 4th prince, he was currently under a great threat. Now, the position of the heir that he had maintained for so long appeared to be facing imminent danger. As a result, the competition between the 2 princes was getting more and more turbulent, and becoming more and more of a dilemma to the various parties as they wondered which prince they should support. If the prince they supported ascended gloriously to the royal position, that would be great, as their own status would then be raised accordingly as well. But if the prince they supported failed, when a new king is crowned, he brings to court his own favorites and expels those he disliked. The new king would definitely pay them back for their previous lack of support. Ling Han and Liu Yutong did not travel by carriage. Instead, they walked to the residence of the 4th prince. At the door, there were many guards stationed, helping to welcome the incoming guests. "Excuse me, Please show us your invitation, the two of you. When a guard saw the two of them approach, he walked over and blocked them from advancing further. Invitation? Ling Han startled. He did not have this kind of thing, as Qi Zhontai had only issued him a verbal invitation. He said, "I'm Ling Han, and I should be on the name list for guests." "Then I apologize. Those without an invitation will not be allowed to enter," the guard said solemnly. "Has that little girl, Qi Zhontai, played a trick on him?" Ling Han could not help thinking thus. "Ha ha ha ha, you dare to come here without an invitation," a taunting voice said. A young man stepped down from a carriage. He was dressed in luxurious formal attire, making him look very flashy. He was Jin Wuxiang, and just before noon, he had even had an argument with Ling Han. "Village boy, this here is the residence of the fourth prince, not a place anyone can simply enter freely." Jin Wuxiang laughed coldly. He then removed a gold-colored invitation from the folds of his clothes, proudly waved it around and said, "Look here clearly, this is the invitation. But a minor character like you will never receive this kind of thing in your life." He really was too pleased. At noon, because of the dread he felt towards the chief butler, he could only choose to flee with his tail between his legs. But since he has met Ling Han here at this moment, this was an opportunity gifted by heavens for him to avenge himself. Haha, he really must properly humiliate this guy, before killing him. Ling Han could not help shaking his head. This guy was only in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so where did his feeling of superiority come from? And he kept attracting aggression for his clan. If he encountered any elite martial artist with a bad temper, that could also possibly lead to difficulties for his clan. "What are you still standing around here for? Do you think that if you stand here long enough, you'll be pitied and allowed in?" Jin Wuxiang continued to sneer in derision, but once his eyes swept over Liu Yutong, his eyes could no longer remove themselves from her figure. He had only just now realized Liu Yutong's presence, and was instantly captivated by this icy beauty. He could only feel the rapidly increasing pace of his heartbeat, and the boiling of the blood in his veins. "Brat, you dash. Peng." Jin Wuxiang had only just opened his mouth when Ling Han gave a heavy blow to his face, and his whole body was instantly flung away. This kind of prodigal young master would definitely have nothing nice to say, so Ling Han made a preemptive strike to avoid filth from entering his ears. "You hit me again." Jin Wuxiang crawled up from the ground. He was full of grievances. Within this one day, he had been hit by Ling Han twice. He was the 6th young master of the Jin clan. When had he ever received such treatment? "If you don't want to be hit a third time, get lost." Ling Han gave a flick of his hand. "How dare you? Are you really so tired of living?" Jin Wuxiang's eyes were spitting fire, and he said to the guards around them, "You have all seen it, right? This guy actually dared to beat up a guest of the fourth prince. Are you not going to apprehend him?" This guy was not stupid, he knew how to take advantage of the situation. "Master Ling, please cooperate." One of the guards stepped out. "You must come with us." Although all of them knew that the 6th young master of the Jin clan was a standard prodigal young master and there were 100 times more people in the city that disliked him than those who liked him, this was the residence of the fourth prince. How could others be allowed to act impertinently in this place? Jin Wuxiang could not help feeling very proud of himself. He was feeling extremely superior because of his own cleverness. See, who was the one who said he'd be nothing without his clan? "Hey, what's the commotion here all about?" A young girl dressed in courtly attire walked out, hands behind her back and a crafty expression on her face. It was Qi Zhontai. "Greetings, 7th princess." All of the guards hurriedly saluted. "Rise." The young girl raised her hand in a mature, experienced manner. When she looked at Ling Han, she deliberately put on a surprised expression, and said, "Yi, why are you still outside?" Ling Han understood now. The girl had purposely not issued him an invitation just to see a good show. As a result, she must have waited near the door, and naturally had witnessed the conflict between Ling Han and Jin Wuxiang. She could have already stepped out early on to stop it, but had only stepped out now. This showed that this girl was the kind of person that desired to see the world in chaos. When they heard her words, the guards naturally realized that Ling Han was truly one of the guests tonight, so there was no longer any need to bother about little details like why he did not have an invitation. And since the seventh princess has already spoken, they could not possibly still intend to apprehend Ling Han. Master Ling, apologies for our lacking manners, all the guards said in unison to Ling Han. Ling Han only gave Qi Zhongtai a stern gaze, but the girl did not feel scared at all. She stuck out her tongue at him and quickly ran over to Liu Yutong and said, "W.A., big sister, you're very beautiful." Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang was infuriated half to death. It seemed like he was a hideous person doing mischief, seeking his own humiliation. His eyes focused on Ling Han, and he naturally thought that Ling Han had clung onto Qi Zhongtai for her power and influence. And when he recalled that Ling Han still had an extraordinarily beautiful maiden by his side, he immediately realized, this guy was a master at picking up girls, and was a professional at living off women. When he thought in this way, he looked even further down at Ling Han. Many thoughts ran through his mind, like how could he kill Ling Han and avenge himself. Just when his thoughts took a venomous turn, he saw Ling Han walk over to him. He could not help straightening up into a pompous stance, and said, "You want to make peace with me now? It's too late. I will definitely dash." Pa. He received a firm, solid slap, and was completely dumbfounded. He, the one and only sixth young master of the Jin clan, had actually been slapped in a public setting. What great shame and humiliation was this? And all around them, whether it was Qi Zhongtai, the guards, or the guests who had arrived subsequently, they could not help gasping when they saw this scene. If a conflict happened amongst the younger generation, it was fine and a normal thing. None of the older generation of the clans would make a move because of this. But even if you beat anyone up, never aim for the face. This was not only an embarrassment to Jin Wuxiang, but also the Jin clan behind him. Even the first prince or the fourth prince would not slap Jin Wuxiang impulsively, unless the latter had really done something extremely foolish and idiotic. Who did Ling Han think he was to actually dare to do such a thing? Chapter 60. Chapter 60, Sitting Up High. Ling Han was a man of simple principles. If you do not bother me, then I will not bother you either. But if you dare to mess with me, then you should be well prepared to suffer my wrath. You've messed with me several times now, do you really think I'm an easy target? He asked coldly. Jin Wuxiang really felt like he wanted to weep himself to death. At noontime, it was he who had been flung out, and now, it was also he who had been slapped. All these times, it was he who was on the losing side, okay? And you still dare to say all this? There's no such logic in this world. Of course, he would definitely not reflect on the fact that it was he who had provoked Ling Han intentionally at both occasions. You can be proud however you want now, but when my elder brother comes later, you'll suffer, Jin Wuxiang said harshly. He believed that his elder brother would definitely avenge him later. Pa. Ling Han gave him 4 consecutive slaps. There was no sign that he had taken Jin Wuxiang's threat seriously. I'll be waiting. With these last words, Ling Han, Liu Yutong and Qi Zhongtai entered the prince's residence together. How come you're even more of a troublemaker than I am? The seventh princess sighed in a sorrowful manner. You've really caused a disaster now. That was a brat from the Jin clan. Although he himself is not worthy of respect, his elder brother is Jin Wuji. Haven't I told you how powerful Jin Wuji is? And yet you still dare to provoke him. Ari, I have to quickly inform Master, and ask him to clean up the mess for you. I'm not going to get implicated in this. Ling Han gave a light rap to her head, and said, if you hadn't harbored evil intentions, and had not failed to issue me an invitation, how would there have been so many problems? What evil intentions? You must not wrong an innocent person. Qi Zhongtai quickly shook her head vigorously, looking like a rattledrum. She was definitely not going to admit to such a crime. I had just forgotten. Forgotten, okay? Big sister Liu, don't you agree with me? She asked Liu Yutong, acting like a spoiled child. Liu Yutong maintained her cool demeanor, causing Qi Zhongtai's eyes to light up. She really felt that this big sister was an individual with quite a personality. The 3 of them arrived at the main hall. There was close to 100 tables here, but they weren't the usual round tables. Instead, they were minuscule long tables, which at most would be able to accommodate 2 people at a time. This setting allowed each guest their own table. If they had brought a companion, then it wouldn't be too much of a tight fit for two people to sit at one table. These tables were arranged in rows of 5, from the doorway of the main hall and further in. Obviously, the further in your table was, the higher your status was. Currently, most of the tables were occupied. Aside from an empty table in the first row, the other empty tables were all arranged after the 10th row. Just find some place to sit, Qi Zhontai said, the corners of her lips lifting up slightly to reveal a crafty smile. She had posed a difficult problem to Ling Han, as she wanted to see where this guy would choose to sit. It was difficult because there was only one empty table at the front, but this was the first row, and only the strongest of the younger generation had the right to sit there. Ling Han's cultivation level was obviously still far from this level. But if Ling Han obediently went to sit at the back, this showed that he did not have much ambition and would capitulate easily. Yet Ling Han did not ponder much about this so-called difficult problem. He only gave a short nod, and without thinking much, headed to the first row. Although he had let go of the glory of his last life, he still possessed the heart of an elite warrior. Since there was an empty space in the first row, he would naturally choose to sit there. Qi Zhontai stuck out her tongue, and thought that there would be a good show to watch soon. But she did not overstep her limits. She quickly commanded a servant to go forth to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to inform Zhong Wei Shan. Otherwise, if things became too much to handle, it would not be easily ended. Yi. Ah. Seeing Ling Han stride towards the front, those who had already occupied their seats all revealed shocked expressions, as they all thought the same thing. Who is this guy? Looks like he's going to sit in the front row. But out of the 5 tables in the first row, 4 were already occupied. The last empty table also actually had an owner. It's just that he hadn't arrived yet. It belonged to Jin Wuji. Was this guy an idiot? He even dared to steal Jin Wuji's table? Interesting. The 4 people who were already seated in the first row all smiled. Some of them wore mocking smiles, while there were some who were genuinely smiling in curiosity, wondering whether this brat was an arrogant fool or someone who had real power to back it up. However, very soon their gazes became focused on Liu Yutong. This young girl was really too beautiful. Though she seemed a little cold, this was also a kind of temperament. Moreover, she was very strong. Could it be that she was the master, and the brat in front was only her attendant? It was more logical to think this way. PFFF. The 4 of them almost choked, because they saw Ling Han sit down boldly while Liu Yutong sat at his side. With this, who was the master and who was the attendant was easily seen. It was really inconceivable. Such an extraordinarily beautiful and extremely powerful maiden could only be seated at this brat's side. Who exactly was he? He must be the heir to some great clan. Otherwise, he would not have dared to take Jin Wuji's table. Ha 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 ha, I've made you all wait. Clear laughter was heard all of a sudden as a tall, thin man strode out of the inside door of the main hall. He had a majestic gait, presenting a kingly visage. This was not a ruler in terms of power, but in terms of a kind of confidence in himself. Greetings, 4th Prince. Everyone stood from their seats. Now that the host was here, the guests would of course have to stand up and pay due respects. The 4th Prince had a table of his own, and his table was the furthermost in front. Moreover, he sat facing the doorway, while the others sat facing the walls. Sit, everyone, please be seated. The 4th Prince, Qi Yongyi's eyes swept over his guests, and when he discovered an unfamiliar face in the first row, he could not help feeling startled. Who might this be? Why had he taken Jin Wuji's table? But his gaze quickly spotted Liu Yutong, and his heart was stirred. He also belonged to the Huyang Academy, so he naturally recognized Liu Yutong to be a noble daughter of the Liu clan, yet she actually sat at Ling Han's side. This, how could Qi Yongyi not experience a great shock at this? But he was still the 4th Prince, and so was naturally very shrewd. There was no change in the expression on his face, though his eyes had still stayed on Liu Yutong's figure for a few moments longer. This did not attract the suspicion of others, because this was a normal occurrence. She was so beautiful that any man would want to stare at her for a moment longer. Let me introduce to you, Qi Yongyi revealed a smile, confident and calm, displaying fully his royal air. He pointed at the first person seated at the first table towards the left in the first row. This is Li Dongyu, Brother Li. He's the personally taught disciple of the sect master of Stone Wolf Sect. Brother Li, it has been a long time. You're about to break through to Gushing Spring Tier, right? Li Dongyu laughed heartily, and said, Fourth Prince, you should not tease me. Even you have not broken through to Gushing Spring Tier, how is it possible that I would be qualified to? Brother Li is really too modest. Qi Yongyi pointed at the second person towards the left. This is Bailey Tengyun, the son of the sect master of Bailey Sect. Bailey Tengyun was extremely young. He seemed to be only about 17 or 18 years old. He was a little cool, only giving a light HN as greeting. Qi Yongyi did not take it to heart, and continued his round of introductions. Next is Xia Zhongguang, Brother Xia. He came from Fuyang Town, and is only 18 years old. He did not participate in the previous Da Yuan tournament, but I believe that he will definitely show extraordinary talent in this tournament. This is Liu Yu, Brother Liu. Like Brother Xia, he's also 18 years old, and I am very optimistic about his upcoming performance. And the last Qi Yongyi's gaze stopped on Ling Han's figure, and his words paused. He did not continue to speak, because he did not know how to continue. However, he did not feel the slightest bit awkward. Instead, he only smiled and looked at Ling Han expectantly, as if waiting for Ling Han to introduce himself. He could also admit that he himself was curious about Ling Han's identity. Who exactly was he to be able to have the noble daughter of the Liu clan serve by his side? Chapter 61. Chapter 61. The first prince has arrived. I am Ling Han. Ling Han stood up, offered a faint smile, and then sat back down. Was that all? Ling clan, which great clan was that? Everyone was very curious. There was no Ling clan in the 8 great clans of the imperial city. Could it be that the Ling clan was a great clan from some other city? That was possible, because there were 36 great cities in Rain Country, and there was a number of great clans in each city. That brought the total of great clans in the whole country to over 100. Who could say with certainty that they knew all of them? However, the most surprised was definitely Qi Yongyi. He was the only one who knew Liu Yutong's real identity. To be able to have a princess of the Liu clan wait upon him, what kind of colossal existence could this Ling clan be? Whatever it was, he still had to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Qi Yongyi was an expert at manipulating the mood, and very quickly, everyone's attention was again focused on him. There was a round of laughter in the main hall, as everyone felt that this prince really had a unique charm, causing many of them to be of a mind to swear loyalty under his banner. Announcing the arrival of the first prince, it was at this very moment that a loud shout was heard from outside. The first prince has arrived. Everyone was extremely shocked. Who didn't know that the first prince and the fourth prince were currently embroiled in a fierce competition for the king's position? Why had he suddenly come here? Fourth brother. Very soon, the first prince appeared at the doorway of the main hall. He was a very handsome man in his 30s. He had a tall and sturdy figure with an exceptional bearing. He was all smiles as he took great strides towards Qi Yongyi, looking nothing like a rival or enemy of the latter. Qi Yongyi stood and walked forwards to greet the first prince. He was also all smiles as he said, "Eldest brother, what are you doing here?" When the two of them neared each other, they both tacitly stopped their advance. They both watched each other with smiles, yet neither had any intention of extending their arms to embrace the other in greeting. My fourth brother is hosting a banquet. I, as the eldest brother, must of course come to show my support, the first prince said, smiling. Qi Yongyi could not help but frown slightly at this. The reason he was hosting this banquet was to gain the will of the people to gather support for when he ascends to the position of the king in the future. There was no way that the first prince did not know this. Then the reason he was here was obvious. He was here to ruin things for him. Hihi, then I'll thank you, eldest brother, he said in a very false manner, though his face still wore a dazzling smile. The first prince paused, and said, I've also brought a noble guest with me. Oh, and who might that be? Qi Yongyi asked. He knew that the first prince would not have come just to show his face. The latter would definitely have a more substantial move planned. "Brother Guo, please," the first prince called in the direction of the doorway. Everyone turned to take a look at the first prince's noble guest and saw a young man in grey walk in. He was of medium height and his features were very ordinary, but when they saw the badge that hung on his chest, there was a slight change in all of their expressions. Yellow-grade medium-level alchemist. Alchemists were an existence that would be welcomed anywhere, as well as an existence that no self-respecting party could lack. If a party possessed the aid and support of an alchemist, then to individual cultivators, or even smaller powers, this party would be very attractive as an ally. Martial artists were too dependent on alchemical medicines. "Fourth brother, let me introduce to you. This here is Guo Dingquan, Brother Guo, and he's a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist. And Brother Guo's master is even more impressive. He is the one and only Grandmaster Duanmu, who has been acclaimed as one who excels in both sword skill and alchemy." The first prince wore a dazzling smile, and was feeling very cheerful. On the other hand, Qi Yongyi felt a bitter taste on his tongue. He knew that the first prince was here to ruin things, and unfortunately, it seemed like he was going to succeed. The fact that Guo Dingquan was a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist was not the main point. The crux of the matter was that his master, Duanmu Changfeng, was an actual black-grade low-level alchemist. Although currently, the first prince was only close with Guo Dingquan, but a disciple could also in a sense represent the master's partiality. The first prince was issuing a signal to everyone. He had a very good relationship with Duanmu Changfeng and has obtained the latter's support. This definitely added a very heavy bargaining chip to his pile, while also being a very heavy blow to Qi Yongyi. The weight of an alchemist was too much. "Brother Guo," Qi Yongyi said in greeting, still maintaining a wide smile. He could not chase the first prince and Guo Dingquan away, or rumors would definitely spread, saying that he was a petty character. As a person who was seated in the upper echelons of society, he definitely had to present himself as a generous man. If he couldn't do even this small thing, then what right did he have to inherit the position of the king? Guo Dingquan was very arrogant. Even towards the fourth prince's greeting, he only replied with a "hn." He was really displaying an all-out arrogance and pride of an alchemist. This profession was really too scarce, so all alchemists were treated with utmost respect and as a result, completely spoilt. "Brother Guo, please sit." Qi Yongyi was secretly angered, but still displayed a very polite demeanor. Guo Dingquan's eyes swept over the scene, before walking forwards in a straight line. If he was sitting, then he was naturally going to sit in the first row. Otherwise, how could he preserve his pride? Because all the tables here were arranged 5 in one row, and there was not much of a gap in between tables, so on both sides, there was a very wide aisle, so Guo Dingquan could only choose to walk up the left aisle or the right aisle. The unfortunate thing was that he chose to walk straight up the left aisle, and arrived at Ling Han's table, but whether or not it was because he had spotted Liu Yutong, that was something that only he himself knew. "You can get lost now," he said coldly. How overbearing. The first thing he said upon opening his mouth was to tell someone else to get lost. Did he really think he was the emperor? However, he himself was a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist, while his master was a black-grade alchemist, so he really did have the confidence to be so overbearing. Ling Han smiled. In the eyes of others, this meant that he was apparently going to give in to Guo Dingquan's overbearing demand, but Liu Yutong knew that it was the exact opposite. Ling Han was angry. Not only that, he was very angry. He said, "Why don't you try saying that again? Get lost. Get lost. Get lost." Guo Dingquan naturally did not feel scared of this subtle threat. He not only said it again, he even emphasized his demand 3 times. A coldness flashed through Ling Han's eyes. In an instant, his hand flashed out, taking hold of Guo Dingquan's neck. With a harsh tug and a pang, Guo Dingquan's face was instantly pressed firmly onto the table. The shock wave of his face meeting the table caused the wine jar to topple over, and immediately, wine splashed all over his face. Guo Dingquan was firmly pressed down onto the table, and he started struggling vigorously, intending to get out of Ling Han's hold. Yet it was all pointless effort. The main hall was dead silent. This guy was really too great, he even dared to hit an alchemist. Everyone sucked their breath in shock. He had balls, he was a real man. The first prince was initially startled, before suddenly erupting in fury. He never imagined that someone would actually dare to beat up Guo Dingquan. Initially, his aura had completely overwhelmed Qi Yongyi, but with this show of force, Guo Dingquan was not the only one who had lost his face. He was also embarrassed. He strode quickly towards Ling Han and his right hand flashed out, intending to grab onto Ling Han's neck, shouting, "I command you to release him." Sure, a strong wind blew past, and Liu Yutong had already acted, blocking the first prince's action. The first prince was stunned by her beauty at first, but immediately his gaze regained focus. Everything could be sacrificed for the king's position, and Guo Dingquan was a trump card that decided whether or not he could defeat the fourth prince, thus he could not allow any problems to emerge. "Step down," he shouted. He did not counterattack immediately because he did not want to harm such a beautiful maiden if he could avoid it. Liu Yutong only gave a wave of her hand, and said, "Get lost. Get lost." She actually told the first prince to get lost. She was indeed extremely daring. When Qi Yongyi saw this, he could not help smiling. He was the only one who knew that Liu Yutong was a noble daughter of the Liu clan. If the first prince offended her, that was definitely not anything good for him. But while this would be a bad thing for the first prince, for himself, this would be a good thing indeed. Chapter 62. Chapter 62, Leaving in Anger. Get lost. With a casual wave of his hand, Guo Dingquan was easily flung away by Ling Han, and with a peng, he crashed into the nearest wall. Bastard. Guo Dingquan got back to his feet and shouted in a towering rage. He was really about to die from his utmost fury. As an alchemist, someone who was respected and revered by everyone, he had actually been pressed onto a table, wine had splattered all over his face, and he had even been flung away to crash into a wall. Thankfully, dinner had not been served yet. Otherwise, his face would have been even more colorful, decorated by a myriad of dishes. "You want to try it again?" Ling Han asked coldly. This was not the first alchemist he had thrashed, and definitely wouldn't be the last. "I want you to die." Guo Dingquan roared furiously. Teng, 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 with heavy steps, he charged over to Ling Han again. As an alchemist, he had never experienced such great shame. If he did not avenge himself, then he could not live with himself. Ling Han moved. Peng, Guo Dingquan was once again held by his neck, and as expected, slammed onto the table face first. The difference was that Ling Han had used more strength this time, causing the table to be broken in half by the force. Dash. Veins were protruding all over Guo Dingquan's face in his anger, and his eyes looked like they were about to spit out fire. However, he did not charge a second time, because he had finally sensed that the gap between Ling Han and himself was far too wide. Damn it, based on aura, Ling Han could only be about the same level as he himself was. At most, they were both in the fourth layer of element gathering tier, but why was he so strong? He turned his head to look at the first prince. The latter was stuck in a confrontation with Liu Yutong, so could not possibly assist him at this time. He raised his voice and said, "Whoever helps me thrash this brat, I will gift him with 10 embracing origin pills." What? Embracing origin pill? For anyone below the 9th layer of element gathering tier, this is a valuable treasure. It can help one in the formation of the origin nucleus and increase the chances of success by about 30%. To give out 10 pills in one go, what opulence! Everyone was discussing this spiritedly, but there were not many who were really interested in taking up Guo Dingquan's offer, because who amongst those invited was not a genius? For a genius, if they even had to depend on external support just to form their origin nucleus, what right did they have to the name of genius? When Guo Dingquan saw this, he could not help grit his teeth and finally announced, "An earth and fire pill." Damn, an earth and fire pill. This time, everyone could no longer just stay in their seats calmly. Even Qi Yongyi and the first prince seemed tempted by this new offer. The earth and fire pill had similar effects as the purple origin pill. It was also used to help a martial artist break through to the gushing spring tier, but its effects were much weaker than the latter. At most, it could only raise the chance of success by 20%. But still, it was a very rare and extremely valuable spiritual medicine. Even for a genius like Qi Yongyi, he also had been stuck at the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier for over half a year. Normally, if one could manage to break through to gushing spring tier within 3 to 5 years' time, that was already a feat worthy of praise. Meanwhile, the first prince had already reached the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier 7 years ago, yet his cultivation level remained unchanged even until now, showing the extreme difficulty of breaking through to the gushing spring tier. An earth and fire pill could very possibly save quite a few years' time of cultivation for even a genius, so it was extremely valuable. However, although the ingredients required for the concoction of an earth and fire pill were not as costly as the ingredients for a purple origin pill, they were still extremely rare, and while there were many willing to buy, none were willing to sell. Otherwise, with the financial resources available to the royal house of the Da Yuan king, they would have been able to afford a few of them. As a result, everyone immediately turned to stare feverishly at Ling Han, as if he himself was an earth and fire pill. What impudence! Where do you people think this place is? Qi Yongyi immediately spoke coldly. He was a man that knew what his role was, so he naturally suppressed the covetousness he felt in his heart. Guo Dingquan was working for the first prince, so he of course would not bother to assist the former. Moreover, Ling Han had an unknown relationship with Liu Yutong, and with this, his position was extremely clear. He'd help Ling Han. With this exclamation from the fourth prince, everyone immediately regained their composure. This was the residence of the fourth prince, and if they dared to come to arms here, then in a sense, it was no different than rebellion. Guo Dingquan breathed heavily and glared at Qi Yongyi fiercely before suddenly turning around and leaving. There was no way that he could swallow this great offense. He was going to fetch his master. No one could insult an alchemist in this manner. Brother Guo! Brother Guo! The first prince hurriedly called as he chased after Guo Dingquan's heels. As sudden as the two's arrival was, they left just as suddenly. There was a temporary calm in the main hall. Some of the guests felt sorry for missing out on an opportunity to obtain the earth and fire pill, while some other guests were curious about the future development of this matter. Come, replace the table. Qi Yongyi began to manipulate the atmosphere and once again displayed his personal charm, causing the atmosphere of the banquet to regain its liveliness. All of them were extremely interested in Ling Han. It was not difficult to restrain Guo Dingquan. In fact, 80% of the people present here would be able to do so easily, but to dare to do so, perhaps only Ling Han possessed such courage. Brother Ling, may I know where do you originate from? Someone finally asked. Grey Cloud Town. Ling Han had no intention of concealing it. After all, since he was intending to participate in the Da Yuan tournament, he could not falsify his identity. Grey Cloud Town? All of them gave a start at this. Wasn't that a small place under the jurisdiction of the Da Yuan city? Then where did Ling Han get his confidence from? He was not the only one who had made a great display of power, for even the girl beside him appeared to be very proud. She had not even taken the first prince seriously. Qi Yongyi was even more surprised. Ling Han came from Grey Cloud Town? Then how had he developed a relationship with Liu Yutong? Even though he himself was of nobility, when compared to Liu Yutong, there was still a bit of a gap between them. After all, they could only be considered as one of the branch families of the imperial family, and after so many generations, their relation with the imperial family was not really very close. Unless he could ascend to the position of the Da Yuan king, even he would not be qualified to marry Liu Yutong. Yet Ling Han could have Liu Yutong follow closely by his side. A brat from a tiny little Grey Cloud Town, what right did he have to do such a thing? As the various dishes were served, everyone too felt slightly famished and so began eating. Martial artists expended a lot of energy, and so would become hungry more easily than normal people. Ha 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 ha, apologies, apologies. Fourth prince, I've arrived late. A long bout of laughter was heard and a tall, young man walked in. He appeared to be about 20 years old, and had an astonishing aura to him. The third son of the Jin clan, Jin Wuji. Jin Wuxiang followed right behind, imitating the former's steps slavishly. He seemed a bit like a mouse that had seen a cat, and there was absolutely no sign of his prior arrogance. Brother Jin, why are you so late? Qi Yongyi asked, smiling as he stood. I had some trifling matters to deal with, Jin Wuji said, as he continued to walk forwards. Elder brother, that's him. That's him. When they arrived at the first row, Jin Wuxiang immediately called out, as he pointed at Ling Han. Jin Wuji's eyes swept over the first row, and could not hold back an expression of shock from appearing on his face, as he said, Yi, younger sister disciple Liu, what are you doing here? He was also a disciple of Huyang Academy, so he naturally recognized the princess, Liu Yutong. Liu Yutong only nodded back calmly and did not make any further response. Jin Wuji knew her personality, so he did not take her cool response to heart. His gaze turned towards Ling Han, and coldness flashed through his eyes immediately. Initially, he had only been a little late, but when he encountered his younger brother at the entrance and found out what the latter had experienced, he immediately ordered someone to investigate Ling Han. This was not difficult. Since he had already registered, there would definitely be a profile of him in the records. A mere young master from a tiny clan of Grey Cloud Town, and he actually dared to oppose the Jin clan? He definitely did not think that Liu Yutong would actually deign to like Ling Han. Even if she did, the Liu clan would definitely not agree to such a match. This would practically be a great dishonor to the clan. As a result, he did not fear that Liu Yutong would defend Ling Han. Moreover, his power was above Liu Yutong. Brat, get lost from my seat, he said coldly. Chapter 63. Chapter 63. Damn, hit the wrong person. Ling Han could not withhold a smile from turning up at the corners of his lips, and said, Are you sure you want this seat? This was originally my seat. Jin Wuji said coldly. Very well, since you want it, then I'll just let you have it. Ling Han stood up very candidly. Pu. Quite a few people exclaimed in surprise. Because, there really was too big a difference between what Ling Han was doing now and what he had done just now. Previously, Ling Han had even dared to thrash the disciple of someone who excelled in sword arts and alchemy openly in front of the first prince. Yet, now he was actually scared off. It was inconceivable. It was really inconceivable. They were not the only ones who thought it was inconceivable. Liu Yutong was in complete bewilderment. Ling Han had left a very distinct impression on her. Though he may appear to be utterly calm, he was prouder than anyone else. How was it possible that he would give in to Jin Wuji's demand? If they really had to battle, she was adequate enough to face Jin Wuji. And even if the Jin clan stepped out and interfered, didn't he still have the colossal existence of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion behind him? In the whole of Rain Country, what party would dare to offend Heaven's Medicine Pavilion? None, there were definitely none. Because, this huge power did not only exist in Rain Country, but also possessed branches in the 9 countries in the desolate north, so whether it was in terms of power or wealth, it had a terrifying amount of both. Just think, when martial artists cultivate, they would definitely need the support of alchemical pills, and Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was a place where alchemical pills could be sold, so how could there be a lack of elite martial artists willing to act on their behalf? From the reverence and respect Zhu Hixin felt towards Ling Han, he had practically recognized the latter as his teacher. If the Jin clan dared to harm Ling Han, he would definitely unleash the power of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch of Rain Country and obliterate the Jin clan. Since the facts were as so, then why would he need to fear? Ling Han stretched out an arm and drew Liu Yutong to himself. An enchanting blush instantly appeared on the young girl's beautiful face, and there was absolutely no hint of the icy beauty from before. Damn! When they saw this dazzling, extraordinarily beautiful maiden, everyone was filled with such irrepressible jealousy that their eyes turned red, wanting nothing more than to chop off the arm Ling Han was holding Liu Yutong with. Liu Yutong's mind had completely blanked. She only felt as if she was walking on clouds, and when she followed Ling Han to sit in one of the tables at the row further behind, even though Ling Han had long withdrawn his arm, she still had not regained her senses. Her heart was still rapidly beating. Just wait and we'll see a good show, Ling Han said softly by her ear. Liu Yutong froze at this, and said, What good show? Ling Han pouted a bit, and said, Don't forget that was something from just now had gone to get reinforcements. You're planning to trick Jin Wuji? Liu Yutong finally understood. Ling Han smiled and said, I've already asked him if he really wanted that seat, and he himself agreed to it, so what does that have to do with me? Liu Yutong could not help pursing her lips in a delicate smile, but immediately frowned, and said, Duanmu Chang Feng couldn't be that hot-headed, right? I bet he has already restrained a whole stomach's worth of anger from yesterday, and when that guo whatever returned, he'd definitely exaggerate the story, thus the old man's wrath would definitely be extraordinarily large. Moreover, when I was thrashing that guo whatever, I immediately acted without saying a single word. Ling Han laughed and said, so, there is a high possibility that the old guy would do something like that. When that Duanmu Chang Feng realizes that he has punished the wrong person, he would definitely focus on you. Liu Yutong's delicate brow wrinkled in a frown. I think that, by that time, Zhu Hixin and Zhong Weishan will have already arrived. However, even if they have not, I have my own ways of dealing with that old man. Ling Han revealed a confident smile, for Zhu Hixin had told about Duanmu Chang Feng to him. The old man was praised as one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, and the sword technique that he practiced was sweeping cloud sword arts, a black-grade low-level martial arts technique. However, the old man only managed to learn 7 moves, while the complete sweeping cloud sword arts had a total of 9 moves. The book of sword arts techniques that the old guy managed to get his hands on should be a partially ruined relic, which was why he had not managed to learn the last 2 moves. Coincidentally, Ling Han possessed the complete sweeping cloud sword arts, so no matter from which angle one looked, he had the upper hand in the upcoming confrontation. Liu Yutong has definitely been badly influenced by Ling Han, and she could not withhold an expectant look from appearing on her face. Because of Ling Han's lack of moral backbone, all of the guests felt shame for sharing his company, thus no one else spoke to him. Meanwhile, Jin Wuxiang turned his head repeatedly, displaying a challenging expression to Ling Han. From his expression, he had clearly held disdain for Ling Han as well. He had originally thought that Ling Han would be stubborn, and in that way, his elder brother would definitely have an excuse to heavily injure Ling Han. He had never thought that the guy was the type to bully the weak while fearing the strong. But, do you think that you'll be able to escape just like this? Jin Wuxiang humphed coldly in his heart. Once the banquet ended and they had left the residence of the 4th prince, Jin Wuji would definitely act and ruthlessly teach Ling Han a lesson. They still had to give face to the 4th prince. Ling Han's capitulation was something that even Qi Yongyi had not thought would happen, so he too grew disdainful of Ling Han. As a result, he did not bother to waste any more time on Ling Han, and went on with his original plans, starting to persuade the other guests in hope that everyone invited would agree to support him. Master, that's him. Not long after, a voice filled with fury was heard. Guo Dingquan had once again appeared at the entry to the main hall, and he was pointing inside. Everyone turned around at this, but they only felt their eyes blurring as a figure flew past with a terrifying speed. It was an old man dressed in a grey robe, with a sword on his back. His figure flashed by and soon appeared next to Jin Wuji. He then stretched out a hand, took hold of Jin Wuji's neck and fiercely pressed it down. Peng! The power behind this move was extremely large, and it had broken the table into 2 halves. By now, the dishes and wine had all been served, so instantly, the wine and gravy from the dishes had all splattered onto Jin Wuji's face. This was an uninvited calamity, definitely an uninvited calamity. How could Jin Wuji have imagined that someone would actually dare attack him? Moreover, his attacker was so overwhelmingly powerful that he didn't even have the ability to defend himself, and in such a confusion, suffered this kind of calamity. Ha 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 ha, you were so arrogant, why don't you try being arrogant again? Guo Dingquan had raced over, and aimed a few kicks on Jin Wuji's behind. His whole face was twisted in fury, as if he wanted nothing more than to commit murder. Jin Wuxiang was initially startled, before shouting, "Why are you beating him up?" He felt very wronged. Because, all this while, the Jin brothers were always the ones who bullied others, yet today, his elder brother had actually been thrashed by 2 people they had never even met before. He didn't even manage to react in time due to shock. Guo Dingquan took one glance at him, and only felt that Jin Wuxiang was a completely unfamiliar face. It was not the icy beauty from before. Still, he did not take this disparity to heart, and only continued to kick Jin Wuji furiously. The people involved in the confrontation each had their own side. One side had misunderstood while the other side was stuck in a complete daze, But others immediately came to a realization. Guo Dingquan had brought his master who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, Duanmu Changfeng, yet had hit the wrong target. Poor Jin Wuji, he was painfully thrashed for no reason. At this moment, he had to be feeling extremely gloomy. No wonder Ling Han had yielded the seat to Jin Wuji just now. Apparently, he had already planned to lay a trap for him. Damn, this guy was really too devious. When they saw that Jin Wuji was still being thrashed while Jin Wuxiang seemed to be at a complete loss, quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing out loud. Moreover, the laughter was getting louder and louder, and finally spread to all the others as everyone held their stomachs and laughed raucously. Guo Dingquan too finally realized that something was wrong. He turned Jin Wuji to face him, and when he saw the unfamiliar face that was completely splattered with wine and gravy, he could not help giving a start and said, "Who are you?" "Pu." Jin Wuji instantly spat out a mouthful of blood in anger. "You don't even ***king know who I am, then why did you beat me up? And you had thrashed me so ferociously, even? Who had he actually offended? No matter who you people are, I will definitely have you pay the price," he roared in fury. Chapter 64. Chapter 64, Effortlessly Controlling the Situation. "This is not the person who had thrashed you." Duanmu Changfeng was also startled, as well as slightly displeased. "Since this wasn't the guy, then why the heck did you point at this guy the moment you came in?" "No." Guo Dingquan was also very depressed. "Since you're not Ling Han, then what the heck were you doing sitting here?" He looked at Jin Wuji and asked, "Where is the person who had been sitting here before?" Jin Wuji was not a fool, so he immediately realized. He had fallen into Ling Han's trap. This brat had offended these two people, and coincidentally, he had demanded for the brat to relinquish his seat to him. As a result, the brat took advantage of the situation to lay a trap for him, causing him to suffer horribly. "That damned little beast. Ling Han," he roared loudly, "get out here, I'm going to kill you." Ling Han. When Duanmu Changfeng heard this name, killing intent instantly appeared in his heart. This was the name of the junior who had caused him to sustain extraordinary loss of face. An old fox like him of course immediately realized that both he and Jin Wuji had been played by Ling Han. Sure, everyone's eyes turned to look at Ling Han. Ling Han was sitting upright, and even with so many people focused on him, he did not feel the slightest bit nervous. He took a sip of wine, and could not help recollecting that in his last life, all the wines he had drunk were the best quality wine. It was definitely not something this so-called excellent wine could be compared to. For the moment, Jin Wuji had no intention of getting his revenge on Guo Dingquan. Moreover, the latter had Duanmu Changfeng with him, and this was a powerful warrior of gushing spring tear whose prowess was stronger than his own by who knows how many times. He looked at Ling Han, his hands tightly gripped into fists. Gravy and blood had spilled from his wounds due to being smashed into the table covered his face. His appearance was ferocious and twisted, it could practically scare kids to tears. "Ah, you've played us," Jin Wuxiang called out, pointing at Ling Han. He had finally realized the truth. Ha 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 ha. Quite a few people could not hold themselves back from laughing aloud. So the saying held true: though a dragon has 9 sons, each of them are different. This Jin Wuxiang was a complete idiot. It didn't even seem that he and Jin Wuji could have come from the same father and mother. "You are indeed extremely daring," Duanmu Changfeng said darkly. He actually dared to manipulate even himself. Looks like this little junior was really tired of living. Seeing Duanmu Changfeng speak, Jin Wuji immediately fell silent. Obviously, the former also had some kind of conflict with Ling Han, and this man was in gushing spring tear, and his status was far higher than his own as well. Even if he intended to get his own revenge, he would have to wait for his turn. Duanmu Changfeng took great strides towards Ling Han, his eyes cold. He had already decided, even if Zhu Hixin and Zhong Weishan both came, he would still not spare this insolent junior. Guo Dingquan followed closely, a cold smile upon his lips. This brat dared to trick even his master. He was really dead this time. Duanmu Changfeng did not walk very fast, but every step he took caused the whole main hall to shake slightly, showing the towering rage that this man, one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy, was currently feeling. Even Qi Yongyi, as the fourth prince, dared not speak up in defense of Ling Han at this moment. What was Ling Han going to do now? His move just now was indeed very beautiful, managing to trap and trick two of his enemies simultaneously. However, no matter if it was Duanmu Changfeng or the Jin clan, neither was a party that could be offended without harsh consequences. Everyone felt extremely curious about his next move. Ling Han did not look at all like that kind of fool. Liu Yutong immediately stood and assumed a defensive stance in front of Ling Han. However, she was immediately pushed lightly aside by Ling Han. Ling Han only said calmly, "The four winds rise, clouds in the heavens thrown into disorder, the tiger and crane both appear, creating invincibility." Ji. Duanmu Changfeng's advancing steps paused, and he looked as if he had been struck by a lightning bolt, wearing an expression like he had just seen a ghost. But after a short moment, he immediately looked very excited, so much in fact that even his body began shaking. This was the verbal chant for the 8th move of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Art. The Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts was a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique. He had learned it from a secret scroll he had obtained from an ancient site. Unfortunately, due to the long passage of time, the parts showing the last two moves had completely deteriorated. There was only a verbal chant as well as an illustration for the 8th move, but there wasn't even a name for the 9th move left behind. The reason why he could afford to not take Xu Hixin and Zhong Wei Shan seriously was because he possessed the Sweeping Cloud Sword Art. The three of them were all in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring tier, but because of the Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, even if Xu Hixin and Zhong Wei Shan joined forces, they would still be no match for him. But it was precisely because this sword arts technique was so powerful that he desired to obtain the last two moves even in his dreams. Thus, when Ling Han recited the verbal chant from Sweeping Cloud Sword Arts, how could he not be excited? You know it," Duanmu Changfeng said, his voice stuttering. "Naturally." Ling Han nodded. "Will you teach me?" The old guy's face was filled with expectation. Ling Han smiled and said, "That will depend on your performance." Duanmu Changfeng did not even spend any time to consider, and said, "Whatever request you have, just say it. Whether it is alchemical pills, or resources for cultivation, I can give them to you." Sigh. Around them, everyone was at an absolute loss. Just now, Duanmu Changfeng seemed like he would stop at nothing in his desire to kill Ling Han, so how come his attitude changed so drastically? Was this some kind of magic trick? Master Guo Dingquan had become anxious. What kind of demonic magic had this brat used? Ling Han pointed at Jin Wuji and his brother, and turned to point at Guo Dingquan as well, and said, "These three guys, they are unpleasant to my eyes." Very well. A very experienced man like Duanmu Changfeng of course instantly understood Ling Han's meaning. He did not say another word before he lifted up Guo Dingquan in one move and in a flash arrived in front of the Jin brothers. His left hand gave a shove, and a very powerful, irresistible force caused the two Jin brothers to fall down onto the floor. Peng 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 peng, Duanmu Changfeng kicked and punched, ravaging the three as much as he liked. Everyone else was completely dumbfounded. Ling Han had just said a few words that sounded like some kind of verbal chant, and Duanmu Changfeng actually became Ling Han's underling, obeying his commands. Admiration for Ling Han had risen in all of them. Whether it was Guo Dingquan, the Jin brothers, or even Duanmu Changfeng, they had all been played, being in the palm of his hand. The Jin brothers were completely depressed, the depression sinking into their very bones. What great enmity or conflict did they have with Duanmu Changfeng? Previously, they had been thrashed by this old man for no reason, but that could be explained by it all being a misunderstanding due to Ling Han tricking them both. But what about this time? But since a powerful warrior of Gushing Spring tier had made his move, what else could they do other than obediently suffer the thrashing without complaints? Qi Yongyi's face was twitching all over. Since the moment he saw that Ling Han had Liu Yutong accompany him, he already knew that this guy was definitely not ordinary, but to be awesome to such an extent caused even him to experience a great shock. Duanmu Changfeng was not just a warrior of Gushing Spring tier, he was also a black-grade low-level alchemist, being slightly well known in Rain Country. Even if a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier met him, the former would be extremely courteous and polite. But now, to put it in a coarse manner, what difference did he have with being Ling Han's underling, simply doing as the latter commanded? What happened to the dignity of an alchemist, or the moral integrity of a warrior of gushing spring tier? However, if he maintained a good relationship with Ling Han, did that mean he would be able to take Duanmu Changfeng under his own banner? The first prince was so excited just from being able to befriend Guoding Quan. If he managed to attract Duanmu Changfeng to his side, then his position would be incomparably steady, and no one would be able to stop him from inheriting the king's position. And thus, when Zhu Hixin and Zhong Weishan arrived at a later time, they saw such a scene. Duanmu Changfeng was thrashing his own disciple and the Jin brothers as if he had gone mad, while the person they were supposedly here to rescue, Ling Han, was leisurely sitting, drinking wine and eating. What kind of game were they playing here? Chapter 65. Chapter 65, Summoned by the Da Yuan King. Guoding Quan and the Jin brothers felt gloomy to the extreme. For Guoding Quan, master beating up his disciple was the same as a father beating his son, or a law of nature, so how could he even think of avenging himself? If he did, that would fall into the crime of ingratitude and cheating his own master, and wherever he fled to, he'd be pointed out by every man. Meanwhile, the Jin brothers knew that the old man that had thrashed them was the one who excelled in sword arts and alchemy, a person who possessed extremely high status. Even when the Da Yuan King met him, he'd still treat the latter with utmost courtesy and politeness, so even if the older generations of the Jin clan found out about this matter, they would still definitely not seek vengeance for them. Which means that they had suffered this thrashing for absolutely no reason. Ling Han. The three of them gritted their teeth in fury. The chief culprit behind all this was Ling Han, and he had become the object of their utmost hatred. Young friend Ling, are you all right? Zhu Hixin and Zhong Weishan had raced over, anxious expressions on their faces. I'm fine. Ling Han shook his head with a smile. Of course he's fine, everyone else thought. He played a trick on both the Jin brothers and Duanmu Changfeng, and now even Duanmu Changfeng was listening to his every command. How could he possibly not be fine? However, when they saw the two alchemists arrive and present an overwhelmingly polite demeanor towards Ling Han, they could not control their lips from twitching, and everyone was becoming even more curious about Ling Han's actual identity. Who was this guy? The heartbeat of the fourth prince had quickened as he decided to spare no effort to pull Ling Han into his own support camp. If he managed to obtain the support of 3 alchemists through Ling Han, then what else did he have to fear from a mere Liu clan? The position of the Da Yuan King would definitely fall to him. Ling Han did not intend to stay any longer in this place, and so turned around to depart. Duanmu Changfeng, uncaring of his own face, followed behind him to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. He still had to ask Ling Han for the verbal chants and illustrations for the last 2 moves of the sweeping cloud sword arts. Regarding this matter, Zhu Hixin and Zhong Weishan were both very shocked. They had never thought that Ling Han not only had a terrifying level of achievements in terms of alchemy, but possessed extraordinary understanding even in the field of martial arts, so much that he could even guide Duanmu Changfeng, who has been praised as one who excelled in both sword arts and alchemy. Ling Han did not go back on his word. Upon their return, he taught the missing 8th move of sweeping cloud sword arts to Duanmu Changfeng. As for the 9th move, he would of course not immediately teach him that last move to avoid Duanmu Changfeng abandoning his benefactor after reaching his goal. At the very least, he would wait until he himself had broken through to the gushing spring tier. By that time, there would be no harm to teach him the 9th move. Anyways, this was just a black-grade medium-level martial arts technique, and for Ling Han, it was completely unimportant. Duanmu Changfeng apparently understood this as well, as he excused himself shortly after obtaining the verbal chant and illustration for the 8th move. Whether he managed to get the 9th move or not would depend on his future performance. When he returned to his room, Ling Han very quickly fell asleep, and Ling Dongxing had completely no idea how big a commotion his son had created that night. None of those who had the qualifications to be invited to the 4th prince's banquet were Maudi idiots, so the news about Ling Han had only spread around in a very small circle. Early morning the next day, a servant from the royal house of the Da Yuan king arrived at Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, saying that the Da Yuan king had invited Ling Han over for a meeting. The Da Yuan king wanted to see him. Ling Han did not have Liu Yutong follow him. He alone went with that servant to the royal house of the Da Yuan king. Very soon, when they arrived at the study, he saw this local overlord. The Da Yuan king was already 60 years old, but because he had a high cultivation level, he did not look old at all. On the other hand, his figure was tall and sturdy, and his whole body exuded a very powerful aura, displaying the atmosphere of a ruler. The sixth layer of spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han only took one glance, and there was no way for this man to conceal his cultivation level in front of his eyes. On the path of martial arts, every fourth and seventh layer was a different threshold. This Da Yuan king should have been stuck on this layer for a very long time. Greetings, Da Yuan king. Ling Han raised his clasped hands as a salutation. Rise. The Da Yuan king raised his hand, and said with a smile, youngsters nowadays are really impressive. Not only managing to reach the fourth layer of element gathering tier at such a young age, you even have 3 black-grade alchemists revolving around you. Even I have not had such an honor. The Da Yuan king had obviously already found out about the previous night's event. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, I only have some slight academic attainments in alchemy, which allowed me to share a common language with Grandmaster Zhu and the others. The Da Yuan king naturally would not believe Ling Han's words, yet he did not attempt to point it out bluntly. He only kept his extreme curiosity to himself. Curiosity how such a genius had appeared within the area under his jurisdiction, and a genius that had 3 alchemists willingly revolving around him at that. Then what about that girl of the Liu clan? He asked with a smile. The issue about Liu Yutong couldn't be hidden from him either. If one is born handsome, he'd be popular everywhere, Ling Han said exaggeratedly. Haha, you, the Da Yuan king pointed a bit at Ling Han, as if reprimanding him for being too slick in his speech. He changed the topic swiftly and asked, whom do you think out of my 2 sons is more suitable to inherit my position? Was it appropriate to ask him this question? Ling Han smiled, and said, the 2 princes each have their individual merits. Who exactly is more suitable? I believe that Da Yuan king, your majesty, you have your own thoughts. Then what need is there for me to speak more on the subject? The Da Yuan king once again broke out into loud laughter as he thought silently, this slippery kid, his argument is watertight. He once again changed the topic, and said, I have one more daughter who has yet to marry. Are you willing to become my son-in-law? Damn, were all the people from the royal house of the Da Yuan king so direct? Previously, when he went to register himself for the tournament, the chief butler had also attempted some matchmaking on the spot. And now, this man, the actual father of the girl, was the same, as if he was in a hurry to marry off his daughter. Ling Han hurriedly waved his hands, and said, my heart is fully focused on martial arts, and within the next few years, I will not consider marriage. The Da Yuan king could not help feeling that it was quite a pity. Even Zhu Hixin, Zhong Wei Shan and Duanmu Chang Feng treated Ling Han with utmost respect, so obviously this young man had terrifying ability in the field of alchemy. If the latter could become his son-in-law, then he would become an unimaginable aid to their family branch. But since Ling Han had already tactfully declined the offer, as a king, he could not be so shameless as to insist. Moreover, his daughter was beautiful, so it was not like there was no one willing to marry her. If you encounter any troubles in future, you may come and ask me for help. The Da Yuan king gave Ling Han a very heavy promise. Even if he could not manage to become Ling Han's father-in-law, he was still determined to maintain an affable relationship with this young man. Many thanks for your generosity. Ling Han accepted this favor with grace. After all, the current him was still too weak, so he still needed this kind of support and assistance. When he returned to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, he discovered that the 4th prince had come to pay him a visit, and had been waiting for a very long time for his return. The 4th prince conversed with him for a very long time, but did not really say anything substantial. He was simply trying to maintain a good relationship with Ling Han. Obviously, the 4th prince knew that he was too weak to actually persuade Ling Han to join his ranks. As a result, it was only a relationship between two contemporaries, and the fourth prince didn't even hint that he intended to have Ling Han join him as an underling. On Ling Han's side, he did not mind having another friend, and so, the two of them naturally had a very delightful conversation. After resting one more day, the actual day of the Da Yuan tournament had finally arrived. The first thing on the agenda was to draw lots. After confirming the 50 seeded participants, the other participants would be divided into groups based on the lots they drew. They would be separated into 50 small groups, which would respectively ascend to their own tournament stage. Then the battle would begin, and the last person standing on the tournament stage would be one of the top 50 participants of this Da Yuan tournament, successfully obtaining a place of enrollment into Huyang Academy. Ling Han had also obtained the place of a seeded participant, and this guaranteed that in the first round of battle, he would not encounter any opponents that were too powerful, or of course, no matter how strong his opponent was, he would still hold no fear. Big brother Ling, Li Hao and the others were standing nearby, waving at him. Chapter 66. Chapter 66. Tournament begins. Aya, I'm done for this time. I drew the 7th group, and I heard that the seeded elite in that group is Sima Wendong. He's the strongest member in his generation of the Sima clan of Da Yuan City, and has already reached the 7th layer of element gathering tier. Liu Dong sighed, shaking his head. I'm worse off. I'm in the first group, and the seeded elite of my group is the 4th prince. I really don't have a sliver of hope left now. Zhu Shuiyi sighed similarly, but she quickly became excited, and said, but it's possible that Li Hao may advance and obtain a spot to enroll in the academy. Ling Han glanced over at Li Hao. Within this time of over a month, he had managed to reach the late period of the 3rd layer of element gathering tier. This, of course, was due to the effects of the 3 transcending origin pills he had taken. With this kind of cultivation level, along with his saber chi, the possibility of Li Hao managing to advance was very high. After all, he had drawn the 40th something group, where the seeded elite was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Although a person in the 4th layer still possessed a great advantage against someone in the 3rd layer, Li Hao had saber chi, which would be more than sufficient to compensate for the gap between himself and his opponent. Additionally, the seeded elite had to face the imminent danger of being ganged up on by everyone else. As long as Li Hao was low-key enough, concealing his power for a sudden eruption at the very end, then it was very possible that he would be the one having the last laugh. Liu Dong and the others were very envious. They had also asked for Li Hao's guidance on saber chi, but no matter how much effort they exerted, they still could not manage to form chi. Ari, when we were in Guorok town, we thought we were the strongest. But it was only when we came here that we realized that the real gathering spot for geniuses was this Da Yuan city. Parties like the Jin clan and the Liu clan can so easily produce 10+ seeded elites. Chen Pengju shook his head, his face filled with disappointment. He and Zhu Chang managed to break through to the element gathering tier with the help of the green spiritual fruit. However, there were so many powerful warriors gathered for the Da Yuan tournament this time. If one did not at the very least possess the prowess of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, then unless he was like Li Hao who had managed to form saber chi, there was absolutely no chance of obtaining a place in the top 50. Big brother Ling, what about you? Which group did you draw? The 5 of them looked at Ling Han in askance. They were all well aware that Ling Han was very powerful, so as long as he drew a good lot, then the chances of him being able to advance into the top 50 were extremely high. Ling Han smiled, and said, I'm the seeded participant of the 40th group. Pu. Liu Dong and the others all choked, and they looked at Ling Han as if they were looking at some kind of monster. A few months ago, this guy had still been the same as them, also in the body refining tier, yet now, he actually managed to become a seeded elite. How could they not be shocked by such a thing? They were also filled with disbelief. You're actually in the 4th layer of element gathering tier already? Li Hao punched a fist on Ling Han's chest jokingly. But once he recalled that Ling Han had given him 2 extra transcending origin pills, and had also declared truthfully that he had more in his possession, then it was nothing strange for him to be able to advance to the 4th layer of element gathering tier in that span of time. If he's a seeded participant, then he'd be able to avoid encountering the other elites. Plus, Big Brother Ling still has sword chi, so he'd definitely be able to win, Liu Dong said, his face filled with envy. Zhu Shuiyi and the others nodded in agreement. If you managed to enter the top 50, you'd be able to obtain a ticket into Huyang Academy, which was the dream of every martial artist in Rain Country. If they knew what had happened the night before, they'd probably be shocked to the point that their eyes would practically pop out. He actually managed to have 3 black-grade alchemists follow behind him. Ha 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 ha, you want to win? That's impossible. An arrogant voice exclaimed, and a young man appeared in front of them. He was Feng Luo. Previously, after they had managed to kill the red-scaled dragon snake, he had attempted to steal the fruits of their labor. Yet, in the end, due to the final counterattack, all his underlings were killed, while he himself received a harsh thrashing at Ling Han's hands, but fortunately managed to survive. They had never thought that he would reappear so quickly with his lofty, arrogant attitude in front of them. There was absolutely no improvement to his cultivation, and he was still in the 9th layer of body refining tier. For the majority of martial artists, that one step into the element gathering tier was an extremely hard one to take. It was not strange at all to spend more than 10 years to take that single step, which was also why Hang Zhon had been so overbearing and forceful, using any means possible to steal the green spiritual fruit. Big Brother Ling is a seeded elite and is very powerful. Why wouldn't he win? Zhu Shuiyi asked Feng Luo. Because I am also in the 40th group. Feng Luo declared confidently. Ha 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 ha. Liu Dong and the others broke out into laughter. One side was in the element gathering tier, while the other was still in the 9th layer of body refining tier. The gap between their respective prowess could really be compared to the gap between heaven and earth. No matter how it was, Feng Luo really did not have a sliver of a chance at winning. Laugh, go on and laugh. You'll be crying in the afternoon. Feng Luo spoke coldly. Liu Dong and the others were all curious. What kind of trump card was hidden up his sleeve that allowed him to have such overwhelming confidence? Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. Feng Luo laughed loudly, walking away with his head held high. Don't worry about him, he's just a nasty character, Ling Han said, smiling. The other 5 nodded in agreement. The drawing of lots was completed before noon, and they would be having the tournament stage battles in the afternoon to select the 50 strongest martial artists. After that, there would be another round of battles the next day to decide the 10 strongest as well as the first place. After lunch, everyone soon arrived at the wrestling ring in the city. There would usually be various martial arts activities held here. During the new year, when a ceremony to offer sacrifices to the gods took place, there were also martial artist versus demonic beast battles held in this location. As a result, the yellow sand of the wrestling ring had been soaked with blood since long ago. Today, because of the Da Yuan tournament, all other activities and events were of course suspended. There were already 10 tournament stages put up in the gigantic sandy zone in the center. Later, there would be simultaneously 10 groups battling it out on the stages, and it would all be finished after only 5 rounds. Ling Han was the seed participant of the 40th group, so he had to wait until the 4th round to go up onto the stage. Liu Dong and Zhu Shuiyi were in the first round. One of them was on the first tournament stage, while the other was on the 7th. There were about 70 people in one group, and the difference in numbers between different groups were in the single digits, because it was possible that there would be some who would forfeit at the last second. There was absolutely no suspense about the conclusion of the first round. All the victors were the seeded elites. They were all like the 4th prince, in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so even if the others all joined forces to gang up on a seeded elite, they were still no match for him. Moreover, in the case of the 4th prince, who would actually dare to offend this man who may become the next Da Yuan king? They obviously did not dare to join forces against him. Additionally, the elites who took part in the first round were also the strongest of the 50. They were all in the top 10 of the previous Da Yuan tournament, like the 4th prince, Jin Wuji and Li Dongyu. Occasionally, in the 2nd and the 3rd round, there would be an unknown martial artist who managed to win, but victory did not fall to either Chen Pengju and Zhu Chang. The 2 of them were mercilessly eliminated from the tournament. Thankfully, they'd be able to get another chance 3 years later. By that time, it was highly likely that they would have managed to reach the middle stage of element gathering tier and thus become seeded elites, and so would have a bigger chance of advancing to the next round. This also confirmed the value of the green spiritual fruit. Otherwise, they may have only just reached element gathering tier 3 years later, so there'd be no second chance for them. Hannah, go on. Ling Dongxing lightly patted Ling Han's shoulder, smiling brightly. The 4th round was about to begin. Half a year ago, he would have never been able to imagine that it was possible his own son to obtain the place of a seeded elite. Liu Yutong nodded to Ling Han. She did not have the slightest bit of doubt that it was possible for Ling Han to lose. As a seeded elite, Ling Han was the first person to step onto the stage, while the other participants in his group would follow after. There were about 70 of them, and Feng Luo was one of them. Begin. A warrior in Gushing Spring tier announced. He had been assigned as a referee by the royal house of the Da Yuan king. Ha 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 ha, clear the area, Feng Luo declared proudly. Instantly, there were at least 30 people who drew their weapons simultaneously and gathered with Feng Luo protected in the center. Then, they began to push on towards the others. The audience below the stage were all dumbfounded. Was this even okay? It was really too shameless. Chapter 67. Chapter 67, Just a bunch of sheep. This is too despicable. Downstage, Zhu Shuiyi and the others had all started shouting in anger. No wonder Feng Luo had been so sure of himself. He had apparently bribed some of the martial artists in the same group to work for him. More than 30 of them were working together, and since this was the 40th group, the seeded elite would not be too strong, thus they'd be more than enough to sweep away all other contenders. Then, the others would all leave the stage of their own free will, so the remaining Feng Luo would naturally be able to obtain a place in the top 50. And he of course would not unreasonably demand to enter the top 10, and definitely not the first place. After all top 50 participants were guaranteed to be enrolled into Huyang Academy. He's too shameless. Completely unfair. All the others downstage had started calling out as well. This was an act of openly breaking the tournament regulations. Yet the referee only gave a cold humph and shouted, "Shut up." Since the tournament regulations did not specify that it was not allowed for individual martial artists to join forces, then Feng Luo's actions were of course allowed. It could at most be argued that he had managed to take advantage of a loophole in the rules. What power and influence a warrior in Gushing Spring tier possessed. All the people downstage were immediately silenced. No wonder that guy had been so confident. He had already bribed some of the others in his group, Zhu Shuiyi said, extremely angry. To be ganged up on by so many people, plus at least more than 10 of them have already reached element gathering tier. It would be difficult for Ling Han to fight against the onslaught of so many. He's going to be in big trouble. Liu Dong frowned. Not necessarily. Li Hao shook his head and said, Big Brother Ling should have already reached the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Furthermore, he has even formed 4 flashes of sword chi, so there is still a chance for him to win. He definitely has to win. That guy, Feng Luo, is really too despicable. The 5 of them all began to cheer Ling Han on. Compared to them, Liu Yutong and Liu Dongxing were extremely calm. A bunch of sheep working together would still only be a bunch of sheep. How could they possibly be able to match a mighty lion? Ha ha ha, leave this guy for last. Chase all the others off the stage. Feng Luo crowed, and commanded the group of more than 30 martial artists to begin wiping out the others. Their combined might was extremely powerful, and due to their cooperation, they had managed to get all the other outsiders aside from Ling Han off the stage, and that was with the mere price of 7 of their numbers being pulled down alongside their victims. Now, this was a battle of 29 against 1, and out of the 29, 14 were in element gathering tier. Oh no, though this brat is a seeded elite, since he's been arranged to be in the 40th group, that means that he's most likely only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. Yeah, many ants can kill even an elephant, and the other party even has 10+ warriors in element gathering tier working for him. I really can't bear to look at that guy, Feng Luo's expression at having his villainous scheme succeeding. Hush, lower your voices. Although the Feng clan isn't a major clan, Feng Luo's elder brother is a well-known genius in our Da Yuan city. In the last round of Da Yuan tournament, he managed to defeat the fourth prince to get the first place. I heard he's already stepped into Gushing Spring Tier. What? Gushing Spring Tier, is that true? Of course it's true. Hiss, no wonder that guy, Feng Luo, dares to be so arrogant. Listening to the discussions of those downstage, Feng Luo felt extremely proud of himself. He did break the rules, but so what? What? You guys can't accept this. He challenged the people downstage. Bite me if you can. You can do something like this too if you have a good elder brother like me. Most of the audience offstage started gnashing their teeth in hatred. They really felt that this guy was despicable down to the bones, making them all feel the urge to rush onto the stage to give him a good thrashing. Ling Han, previously, you made use of the advantage in numbers against me, but this time, I have so many people on my side. Even if every one of them only hit you once, they'd be able to give you a terrible thrashing. If you know what's good for you, then kneel down immediately and beg me for mercy. I may even consider hitting you a few times less. Feng Luo said, pointing at Ling Han. Had it been them bullying him because of them having an advantage in numbers previously? Indeed, at the time, all his lackeys had died, while Ling Han's side had 7 people, so that was actually them bullying him because of their advantage in numbers. This guy was indeed shameless to a whole new level. Ling Han shook his head, and said, looks like if I don't hurry up and throw you off the stage and allow a clown like you to continue your performance, the fury of the masses would probably be incited. Ha 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 ha, laughter broke out instantly downstage. What a hateful guy, you still dare to be so stubborn. I won't spare you. Feng Luo was driven practically mad from fury. He extended a finger and pointed at Ling Han and said, beat him, give him a good beating. Understood. The group of more than 20 people all rushed towards Ling Han. All of them were brandishing their respective weapons, presenting a fierce image. The tournament stage battles allowed the use of weapons. Otherwise, the martial artists would not be able to display their strongest abilities. However, this also increased the danger of the battles. So if you were afraid of dying, then it would be best if you quickly jumped off the stage on your own. If you stayed on the stage, then you should have a certain level of mental preparation. Ling Han did not bother to use his sword. He charged over with only his fists. Using dashing panther fists would be more than enough to handle these people. Peng, 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 peng. He charged forward and every single person who stood in his way was flung off stage with a single punch from him. One has to understand that although his cultivation level was only the 4th layer of element gathering tier, with the eruption of the 5 elements origin nuclei, his prowess could be compared with that of a normal person in the 8th layer of element gathering tier. Additionally, the dashing panther fists was a yellow-grade high-level martial arts technique, so wouldn't it be more than enough for him to single-handedly deal with these people? By the time Ling Han reached Feng Luo, all the others had been thrown off stage by him. There was absolute silence. Wasn't this guy too powerful? Since he was the seed of the 40th group, then shouldn't it be obvious that he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier at most? But judging from his ferocious attacks, that was definitely power that was at least of the late stage of element gathering tier. Could it be that he had deliberately hidden his actual cultivation level, pretending to be a pig to devour the tiger? However, there were naturally the older generations of the various great clans present on this occasion, so there was no lack of people with cultivation levels above the 5th layer of element gathering tier. Naturally, they managed to easily sense Ling Han's aura, and it definitely showed that he was only in the 4th layer of element gathering tier. This caused them to be confused as well. They all started murmuring amongst themselves, exchanging their thoughts about how this could be possible. No, impossible. Feng Luo said, shivering. His expression was one of complete disbelief. The script wasn't supposed to be like this. He should have successfully and easily entered into Huyang Academy. Then, with the care and assistance of his brother, easily break through to element gathering tier. If he was lucky, he'd be able to consume some kind of spiritual fruit, and may even be able to break through to gushing spring tier. But all of his plans were rendered useless if he couldn't manage to enter into Huyang Academy. Arrogant, just continue being arrogant. Ha 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 ha, just continue staying on stage, if you dare. The people downstage all started taunting Feng Luo. They had already long been displeased by this guy, but just now, because he had a lot of people on his side, they didn't dare to make too much of a fuss. But what about now? Who would have imagined that Ling Han would actually be so powerful? You immediately admit defeat, then get off the stage. Otherwise, I will tell my brother to take care of you. With the taunting resounding in his ears, Feng Luo finally reacted. He actually pointed at Ling Han and commanded him to give up. Ling Han shook his head. This guy had really been spoilt. He was a complete idiot. Pa. He leapt and aimed a kick at Feng Luo's lower abdomen. Su, the guy flew off stage. He held on to his lower abdomen, gasping in pain. It even looked like he was about to tear up from the pain. 40th group, Ling Han wins. The referee announced. No. This place is mine. It's mine. When Feng Luo heard this, he actually jumped up and said to the referee, change your judgment immediately, or else I'll have my brother beat you to death. Everyone else instantly broke out into incredulous laughter. Someone merely in body-refining tear actually dared to threaten a warrior of gushing spring tear. It was absolutely hilarious. Get lost. The referee gave a cold humph. He stretched out a hand and gathered his origin power to form a gigantic hand, which took hold of Feng Luo and threw him out. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.